Before we begin, if you love stories of brutal survival, fierce revenge, and a woman who refuses to stay broken, stay with me until the end. You won't regret it. And if this story hooks you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Let's build this community together. The cold didn't kill you right away. That was the cruelest part. Arya Vance learned this truth as she lay in the snow, her face pressed against ice that burned like fire, her lungs struggling to pull in air through broken ribs. Blood pooled beneath her, dark and steaming in the moonlight, melting the frost in spreading circles that looked almost beautiful, if you ignored what they meant. She'd been here 3 hours, maybe 4. Time moved strangely when you were dying. Her left eye had swollen shut from Marcus's fist, but her right eye still worked, still saw the endless white expanse of the borderlands stretching toward mountains she'd never reach. The boundary markers, tall posts driven deep into frozen ground, stood like silent witnesses 50 yards away. Beyond them lay territory her pack had warned her about since childhood. Enemy land, Draven territory. Better to die out here than cross that line, her father used to say. Turned out there were worse things than enemies. You should have kept your mouth shut, Arya. Marcus's voice still echoed in her head, calm and cold as he'd stood over her in that basement. Did you really think anyone would believe you? You're nobody. You've always been nobody. The memory tried to drag her under, but she fought it. She needed to stay conscious, needed to understand how she'd been so blind. 3 days ago, she'd been preparing for her bonding ceremony. 3 days ago, Marcus Thorne had been her future, the beta her father had chosen, the man who would stand beside her when she took her place in the pack hierarchy. She'd trusted him, loved him even, in the careful way you loved someone chosen for you rather than by you. Then she'd found the records. It had been an accident, really. She'd gone to Marcus's office looking for the ceremonial contracts, needing to review the terms before the elders arrived. The locked drawer hadn't seemed important, until it had sprung open when she'd leaned against the desk, revealing stacks of ledgers that didn't match any official pack documentation. The numbers had been damning, supply shipments that never arrived, medical resources diverted and sold, funds meant for the weakest families, widows, orphans, the injured, vanishing into accounts she didn't recognize, and Marcus's signature on every page, along with 2 other names that made her stomach turn, her uncle's and the pack's chief enforcer. They'd been bleeding their own people dry for years, quietly, systematically. While families went hungry and elders died from preventable illness, 3 men had been building private fortunes on the backs of those they'd sworn to protect. She'd taken photos, documented everything. Then she'd made her fatal mistake. She'd confronted Marcus directly, believing he'd have some explanation, some justification that would make it make sense. Instead, he'd smiled. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for," he'd said, closing the office door behind him with a soft click that had made every instinct in her body scream. "That's going to make this complicated." She'd run. She'd made it halfway across the compound before his enforcers had caught her, their hands brutal and efficient as they dragged her into the basement beneath the elders' hall, the same hall where she was supposed to have been bonded in 2 days' time. The beating had been thorough, professional. Marcus had watched most of it, only stepping in twice, once to break her ribs himself when she'd spat blood at his feet, and once to inject something into her neck that had made the world tilt sideways and her voice die in her throat. "Temporary," he'd said, checking her pulse with clinical detachment. "But it'll last long enough. By the time anyone finds you, if they find you, it'll look like you wandered off and got lost. Tragic accident. The whole pack will mourn the poor girl who couldn't handle the pressure of bonding and ran away into the night." They'd driven her to the borderlands in the back of a supply truck, her body wrapped in canvas like cargo. When they'd dumped her in the snow, Marcus had crouched beside her, his breath misting in the frozen air. "I actually liked you, Arya. That's the sad part. You would have made a decent partner if you'd just stayed in your lane." He'd stood, brushing snow from his knees. "But you had to go digging. You had to play hero." Then he'd walked away, taking his enforcers with him, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and the knowledge that she'd die knowing the truth, but unable to speak it. The drug he'd given her had worn off enough that she could make sounds now, small whimpers that came out as breath and nothing more. Her vocal cords felt paralyzed, useless. She'd tried to scream a dozen times, but nothing came out except air. "Help! she thought desperately. Someone. Anyone. But there was no one. The borderlands were neutral territory for a reason, contested ground that neither pack claimed, too dangerous to patrol, too close to enemy lines to risk. No one would come looking for her here. Even if they did, Marcus had made sure there'd be nothing suspicious to find. Just another young wolf who couldn't handle pack life and made a stupid decision. The cold was winning now. She could feel it in her fingers. They'd stopped hurting an hour ago, which she knew was bad. Her legs had gone numb. Only her core still felt anything, and what it felt was agony, each breath a knife between her ribs. This is how it ends, she thought distantly, alone in the snow. Silenced. Forgotten. Something moved at the edge of her vision. At first she thought it was another hallucination. She'd been seeing things for the past hour, shadows that looked like wolves, shapes that dissolved when she tried to focus on them. But this shadow didn't dissolve. It grew larger, more solid, until it resolved into the unmistakable silhouette of a man. No, not just a man. An alpha. She could feel it even through her fading consciousness. That pressure in the air, that weight of presence that only true alphas carried. It made her wolf stir weakly inside her, responding to something primal and undeniable. The figure approached slowly, cautiously, like someone who'd found something unexpected and was trying to determine if it was threat or opportunity. When he got close enough, moonlight caught his features, and Arya's remaining eye widened in recognition she shouldn't have had. Kyle Draven. She'd never met him. Their packs had been enemies for 3 generations, avoiding each other except for the occasional border dispute or territorial negotiation. But everyone knew what he looked like. Everyone whispered about the alpha who'd taken control of the Draven pack at 23 after his father's death, who'd turned a struggling territory into one of the strongest in the region through sheer ruthless efficiency. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes that looked black in the shadows. His face was all hard angles and sharp edges, the kind of face that didn't smile much, didn't soften. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, pale against tanned skin, and he was staring at her like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to find. "Vance territory," he said quietly, his voice rough from cold or disuse. He wasn't talking to her, he was reading the scent markers on her clothes, the territorial signatures every pack member carried. "You're a long way from home." She tried to speak, managed a wheeze that might have been a word. His eyes narrowed. He dropped to one knee beside her, close enough that she could see the details now, the way his jaw tensed, the flicker of something that might have been surprise or concern crossing his face. His hand moved toward her throat, and she flinched instinctively, expecting violence because violence was all she'd known for the past 6 hours. But his touch was careful, clinical. He pressed 2 fingers against her pulse point, counted silently, then moved his hand to check the swelling on her face. "Who did this?" The question came out flat, almost conversational, but there was something underneath it, a current of anger that made the alpha presence around him intensify until the air felt thick with it. She couldn't answer, could only stare at him with her one good eye, trying to communicate everything she couldn't say. "Help me, please, I'm dying. They tried to kill me, I know things, I have proof." Kale's gaze swept over her systematically, taking in the blood, the bruises, the unnatural angle of her left arm. When he reached her ribs, his expression went utterly cold. "Deliberately broken," he muttered. "Not a fight. An execution." He sat back on his heels, studying her face. "You're that Vance girl. The one who was supposed to bond with Marcus Thorne." It wasn't a question. Somehow he knew. "Ceremony's in 2 days, so why are you bleeding out in neutral territory?" The pieces were clicking together in his head. She could see it happening, see the moment he understood that this wasn't an accident or a random attack. This was intentional. This was pack business. "They tried to silence you," he said softly, "permanently." She managed the smallest nod, and something shifted in his expression. Not pity, she'd have hated pity. Something harder. Something that looked almost like recognition. He glanced toward the boundary markers, then back at her. A decision was forming behind those dark eyes, and Arya couldn't tell if it would save her or finish what Marcus had started. "I should leave you here," Kyle said, and her heart tried to sink before he continued. "It would be smart. You're not my pack, Not my problem. Your people dumped you on purpose. Bringing you back would start a war I don't need right now. He paused. But they left you here to die, knowing you'd found something worth killing for, which means whatever you know is dangerous enough to risk everything to hide. His hand moved to her collar, pulling aside the fabric to reveal more bruising, the distinctive pattern of fingers wrapped around her throat, trying to choke the life out of her before they'd switch to other methods. And I really hate people who hurt the defenseless. The words were matter of fact, almost casual, but they carried a weight that made something loosen in Arya's chest. Not hope, not yet, but the first fragile possibility that she might survive the next hour. Kale stood abruptly, pulling a radio from his belt. Riker, bring the medical kit to boundary marker 7. Now. Static, then a rough voice. Boss, that's past. I know where it is. Just get here. He crouched beside her again, already pulling off his heavy coat. This is going to hurt, he warned, before carefully sliding the coat under her shoulders and wrapping it around her torso. The warmth was shocking, almost painful against her frozen skin. Can you move at all? She tried. Managed to shift one leg maybe an inch before agony exploded through her hip, and she had to bite her tongue to keep from screaming. Not that any sound would have come out anyway. That's what I thought. Kael's hands moved over her with professional efficiency, checking for breaks, assessing damage. When he touched her ribs, she did make a sound, a thin, airless keen that seemed to bother him more than her silence had. 3 broken ribs minimum, possible internal bleeding, advanced hypothermia, and he tilted her head gently, examining the injection site on her neck. Someone dosed you with something recently. She tried to gesture toward her throat to make him understand about her voice, but her hand wouldn't cooperate. Vocal paralytic, he guessed, seeing where she'd tried to point. Clever. Can't scream, can't call for help, can't testify if anyone finds you in time. His jaw worked. Marcus is thorough. I'll give him that. Another shape materialized from the darkness. A younger man, broader than Kael, but carrying himself with obvious deference. He dropped to his knees beside them, a medical kit already open in his hands. Jesus Christ, Riker breathed, staring at Arya. Boss, is that? The Vance girl. Yes. But the bonding ceremony is apparently off. Kael took supplies from the kit without looking away from Arya's face. Riker, I need you to not ask questions for the next 10 minutes. Can you do that? Riker's eyes went wide. You're bringing her back. I'm saving her life. What happens after that? Kael pressed gauze against the worst of the bleeding on her head. We'll figure it out. Her pack is going to lose their minds. Only if they find out she's alive. Kael's tone went sharp. Which they won't. Not until I decide they should. Riker opened his mouth, closed it, then nodded slowly. Okay? Okay. What do you need? Stabilize her enough to move. We'll do the rest at the compound. They worked quickly, these 2 men who should have been her enemies. Riker wrapped her ribs while Kael started an IV line with hands that were surprisingly steady. The fluid going into her veins was cold at first, then warm, then burning as her body tried to remember how to process nutrients it had nearly forgotten it needed. We're going to have to move you, Kael told her. It's going to hurt like hell. I'm sorry. He didn't wait for a response she couldn't give, just slid his arms underneath her, one behind her shoulders, one under her knees, and lifted her in a single smooth motion that sent white-hot pain screaming through every nerve she still had working. This time, she did scream. No sound came out, but her body convulsed with it, and Kael held her tighter, murmuring something she couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. Stay with me. His voice cut through the pain. Arya, stay conscious. You survived this long. Don't quit on me now. She focused on his face, on the hard line of his jaw and the intensity in his eyes. Focused on staying awake because he'd told her to, because some part of her recognized the command of an alpha and responded to it even as everything else shut down. That's it, he said quietly. Keep those eyes open. We're almost there. She didn't remember the journey. Just fragments, the sound of snow crunching under boots, the warmth of Kael's chest against her cheek, Riker's voice asking questions that got one-word answers, cold air giving way to sudden warmth, bright lights, voices she didn't recognize. Found her in the borderlands? Massive trauma, needs surgery. Can't bring her here. If the Vance pack finds out. They won't. Kale's voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. She's under my protection now. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Silence. Then the sound of footsteps retreating and new hands touching her, gentler than before, professional. I've got her, Alpha. A woman's voice, older, carrying authority. Let me work. Arya felt herself being transferred to something soft. A bed, a gurney, she couldn't tell. The coat slid away and she wanted to cry out at the loss of warmth. But then there were blankets, heated blankets, wrapping around her like a cocoon. Kael, the woman's voice again. This is bad, really bad. If she makes it through the night, she will. You can't know that. Yes, I can. A pause. Do whatever it takes. I don't care what it costs. More fragments. A needle sliding into her arm. Medicine that made the world soft at the edges. The pain receding to a distant, manageable thing. Someone cleaning the blood from her face with careful hands. And through it all, Kael's presence, standing somewhere nearby, watching, waiting, not leaving. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was his face, backlit by harsh medical lights, his expression unreadable except for one thing. He looked at her like she mattered, like she was worth saving, like maybe Marcus had been wrong about her being nobody. Then the drugs pulled her under and she let them, because for the first time in 6 hours, she felt safe enough to stop fighting. When Arya woke, she thought she'd died. The room was too warm, too soft, too quiet. Heaven, maybe, or some final hallucination before her brain shut down for good. She lay still, afraid that if she moved, the illusion would shatter, and she'd find herself back in the snow, freezing and alone. But the pain was real, duller than before, wrapped in layers of medication that made everything fuzzy, but unmistakably there. Dead people didn't hurt. She opened her eyes. White ceiling, not snow, plaster, clean and unmarked. A single light fixture, modern and efficient. To her right, a window showing darkness outside, though whether it was the same night or a different one, she couldn't tell. To her left, medical equipment that beeped softly, monitoring vitals she was surprised she still had. The room was small but well appointed. Not a hospital. The decor was too personal, too warm. A private medical suite, maybe. The kind of place where people recovered from injuries they didn't want anyone knowing about. She tried to move and immediately regretted it. Her ribs screamed protest. Her left arm was immobilized in some kind of brace, and when she tried to turn her head, her neck sent lightning bolts of pain down her spine. Don't. The voice came from the corner, making her freeze. You've got 3 broken ribs, a fractured ulna, severe bruising to your trachea, and a concussion. Moving is a bad idea. Kael Draven unfolded himself from a chair she hadn't noticed, stepping into the light. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes she didn't remember from before, and his hair was disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. But his gaze was alert, focused entirely on her. You've been out for 18 hours, he said, answering the question she couldn't ask. Dr. Reeves says you'll live, but it's going to take time and a lot of pain medication. Arya tried to speak. This time, a sound came out, rough and barely audible, but present. Progress. Your voice is coming back. Kyle moved closer, stopping at the foot of the bed. The paralytic is wearing off, should be fully gone in another day or 2. She managed 2 syllables. Why? He knew what she was asking. Why save her? Why bring her here? Why care about a girl from an enemy pack who should have died in the snow? Because Marcus Thorne left you in my territory, Kyle said simply. Maybe not officially, but close enough. And I don't allow murder on my doorstep without knowing why. He pulled the chair closer, sitting so they were at eye level. So here's how this works, Arya Vance. You're going to recover. You're going to get strong enough to talk properly. And then you're going to tell me everything. What you found, why they tried to kill you, and why it's worth going to war over. War. The word hung between them like a blade. Because make no mistake, Kyle continued, his voice dropping to something quiet and dangerous. If I send you back now, you're dead. Marcus will finish what he started the moment he knows you survived. And if I keep you here without justification, your pack will demand your return, and I'll have no legitimate reason to refuse. He leaned forward slightly. But if what you found is as damaging as I think it is, if it's proof of corruption that violates pack law, then keeping you here becomes protective custody. It becomes my duty as an alpha to shelter you until justice is served. Arya stared at him, trying to process the implications. He wasn't saving her out of kindness. He was saving her because she was useful, because whatever she knew could give him leverage against a rival pack, could shift the balance of power in his favor. She should have been offended, should have been angry. Instead, she felt relieved. Kindness could be withdrawn. Kindness could change its mind. But self-interest, cold, calculating self-interest, that was something she could count on. That was something that would keep her alive long enough to make Marcus pay for what he'd done. "Files," she rasped, the words scraping her throat like broken glass. "Hidden. Proof." Kale's eyes sharpened. "Where?" She tried to think through the fog of pain and medication. Where had she hidden the phone with the photos? Not in her room. That would have been the first place they looked. Not in Marcus's office. Too obvious. Where? The memory came back in a rush. The Elder's Hall. She'd hidden it in the Elder's Hall, tucked behind a loose stone in the foundation, in a crawl space she'd discovered as a child when she used to play there during ceremonies. Elder's Hall, she managed. Foundation. East wall. Stone. Moves. They'll search there. She shook her head slightly, immediately regretting it when the room spun. Hidden. Childhood spot. No one knows. Kale considered this, his expression unreadable. If I send someone to retrieve it, there's risk. If they're caught on Vance territory, can't go back. The words came out stronger now, fueled by desperation. Marcus will kill me. I know. Kale's voice was surprisingly gentle. That's why you're staying here, under my protection, whether you want to or not. It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise. Arya's vision was starting to blur at the edges, the medication pulling her back under. She fought it, needing to know one more thing. Why you? She whispered. Why? Care? Kale was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried something she hadn't expected, personal history wrapped in old wounds. Because 5 years ago, I found someone like you. Someone who'd discovered corruption in their own pack and tried to expose it. Someone who got silenced for doing the right thing. His jaw tightened. I was too late then. She died before I could help her, before I even knew she needed help. He stood, moving back toward the shadows. I'm not making that mistake twice. The darkness was taking her again, warm and soft and inevitable. But before it did, she managed one last word. Thank you. She didn't see his expression, didn't see the way his hands clenched at his sides, or the flash of something raw crossing his face before he locked it down again. But she heard his response, quiet and final. Don't thank me yet, Arya. Thank me when you're alive to testify, and Marcus is standing in front of the council answering for what he did. Until then, he paused. Until then, we're even. Sleep took her. And for the first time since Marcus had smiled at her across that office, Arya Vance allowed herself something dangerous. The voices woke her before dawn. They weren't loud, just the opposite. They were the careful, hushed tones of people arguing while trying not to be overheard, and that made them impossible to ignore. Arya kept her eyes closed, her breathing steady, and listened. Completely insane, Kyle. You know that, right? A woman's voice, sharp with frustration. Not the doctor from before, someone younger. Your objection is noted, Maya. Kale sounded tired, like this wasn't the first time they'd had this conversation. Noted? That's it? The woman, Maya, let out a harsh laugh. You bring an enemy wolf into our stronghold, put her under your personal protection, and when your entire council tells you it's a mistake, you just note our concerns? The council doesn't run this pack. I do. Then act like it. Send her back. So they can finish killing her? So she becomes their problem instead of ours. Maya's footsteps moved closer to the bed, and Arya had to focus hard on keeping her face relaxed, her breathing even. Look at her, Kale. She's broken. Even if she survives, even if she recovers, what then? You think the Vance pack will just let you keep her? You think Marcus Thorne is going to say, oh well, guess she got away and move on? No, Kale said quietly. I think Marcus is going to panic. I think he's going to make mistakes. And I think those mistakes are going to give me exactly what I need. Silence stretched out. When Maya spoke again, her voice had changed, less angry, more worried. This isn't like you. You don't take risks without calculating every angle first. But this girl, you're not thinking clearly about her. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're making this personal. And personal gets people killed. Arya heard movement. Kael standing maybe or shifting position. When he spoke, his voice was harder. The council meeting is in 3 hours. I expect everyone there. We'll discuss this properly then. There's nothing to discuss. You've already made up your mind. Then the meeting will be short. Maya's footsteps retreated, but she paused at what must have been the door. She's going to bring war to our doorstep, Kael. And when she does, I hope whatever you think she's worth is enough to cover the cost. The door closed with a soft click. Arya waited, counting her heartbeats, wondering if Kael had left too. But then she heard him move closer, felt the subtle shift in air pressure that meant someone was standing right beside her bed. You can stop pretending, he said quietly. Your breathing changed 30 seconds ago. She opened her eyes. He was watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes, his arms crossed over his chest. In the pre-dawn light filtering through the window, he looked harder than before, less like the man who'd saved her, and more like the alpha everyone whispered about. How much did you hear? He asked. Enough. Her voice was stronger today, though it still hurt to talk. She's right. I'm going to cause you problems. Probably. So why keep me? Kael pulled the chair over and sat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Because Maya's smart, but she's wrong about one thing. This isn't personal. It's strategic. Marcus Thorne has been running protection rackets and skimming resources for years. I've suspected it, but I've never had proof. You're going to give me that proof. And then what? Then I'm going to use it to destroy him in front of the entire regional council, publicly, undeniably. And when the Vance pack falls into chaos trying to figure out who else was involved, I'm going to offer them a deal they can't refuse, support and resources in exchange for new territorial agreements. Arya stared at him. You're going to use my pain to expand your power. Yes. At least he was honest about it. That was something. What if I don't want to be your weapon? She asked. Kael's expression didn't change. Then you're welcome to leave. Right now. I'll have someone drive you to neutral territory, and you can make your own way from there. He paused. Of course, Marcus will hear you're alive within 24 hours. And this time, he won't leave witnesses or loose ends. The choice was clear. Stay here and be used, or leave and die. Some choice. I want something in return, Arya said. That got a reaction, one eyebrow rising slightly. You're in no position to negotiate. Neither are you. Without me, you don't have proof. You don't have testimony. You don't have anything except suspicions. She pushed herself up slightly, ignoring the way her ribs screamed. So, if I'm going to be your weapon, I want to be a weapon that knows how to fight, not just stand there and bleed on command. Kael studied her for a long moment. You want training. I want to never feel helpless again. The words came out raw, honest. Marcus beat me because I couldn't stop him. His enforcers dragged me away because I wasn't strong enough to resist. I need to be able to protect myself, to fight back. You're injured. Then teach me when I heal. It takes months to develop real combat skills, years even. Then we'd better start soon. Something shifted in Kael's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Respect, maybe, or recognition of someone who understood that survival meant adaptation. If I agree to this, he said slowly, you follow my rules. You train when I say train, rest when I say rest, and you don't push yourself so hard you undo the doctor's work. Understand? Arya nodded. And you tell me everything about those files. Every detail, every name, every transaction. Nothing held back. Everything, she agreed. But only to you. Not your council, not Maya, not anyone else until we decide together how to use it. Kael's eyes narrowed. You don't trust my people. I don't trust anyone. She met his gaze steadily. Not anymore. Not after Marcus. So if we're doing this, if we're really doing this, then it's between you and me. Everyone else is a security risk until proven otherwise. For a long moment, she thought he'd refuse. Thought he'd call her paranoid or ungrateful or stupid. Instead, he stood and extended his hand. Deal. She took it, and his grip was firm, careful not to hurt her, but strong enough to make a point. This was a contract between equals, not charity from superior to inferior. Rest today, Kael said, releasing her hand. The council meeting will probably get loud, but stay in here. Dr. Reeves will check on you this afternoon. Tomorrow, if you're cleared, I'll show you the training grounds. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Arya? About not trusting anyone, that's smart. But eventually, if this is going to work, you're going to have to trust someone. I know, she said quietly. I'm choosing you. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than she'd intended. Kael's expression flickered, surprise maybe, or something else she couldn't name, before he locked it down again. Don't make me regret that, he said, and left. Arya lay back against the pillows, her heart pounding harder than it should have been. What had she just agreed to? An alliance with an enemy alpha, training that would probably break her body all over again, and a plan that required her to face Marcus in front of the most powerful wolves in the region. But the alternative was death. Or worse, a life spent hiding, running, always looking over her shoulder. At least this way she'd go down fighting. The council meeting happened exactly as Kael had predicted, loud. Arya couldn't see it, confined to her room as she was, but she could hear it even through the thick walls of the medical wing. Raised voices, fists hitting tables, someone shouting about tradition, and someone else shouting about survival. It went on for 2 hours before finally, abruptly, cutting off into silence. When Kael came to check on her that evening, he looked like he'd fought a war and barely won. Still alive? He asked, settling into the chair that was becoming his usual spot. Unfortunately for you, yes. That almost got a smile. The council voted. You can stay, but with conditions. You're confined to the compound until you're healed. No communication with your old pack, and you'll be assigned a guard whenever you leave this wing. They don't trust me. They don't know you. There's a difference. He rubbed his temples. Maya's the worst of them. She thinks you're a spy or bait for a trap or both. I managed to convince her you're just a refugee, but she's watching you. They all are. What did you tell them about why I'm here? The truth, that I found you dying in the borderlands and brought you back for medical treatment. I didn't mention the files or Marcus or anything else. As far as they know, you're a victim of circumstance who needs temporary shelter. Arya absorbed this. And when the truth comes out, then they'll be angry I kept it from them. But they'll also understand why. Kael leaned back, studying her. How are you really feeling? And don't lie. Dr. Reeves showed me her charts. Like I got beaten half to death and barely survived. So pretty much exactly as advertised. She shifted carefully, testing her range of motion. But better than yesterday. And I'll be better tomorrow. That's what matters. Dr. Reeves says you heal fast, faster than average. Strong bloodline, Arya said automatically, then caught herself. Strong bloodline from a pack that had tried to murder her. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Kael must have seen something in her expression, because his voice gentled. You know it's not your fault, right? What Marcus did. What your pack allowed him to do. I know that logically, emotionally. She trailed off. I keep thinking about how many people must have known, or suspected. My father chose Marcus for me. Did he know? Did the elders? How many of them looked at those families suffering and decided their silence was worth more than those lives? Probably more than you want to believe. That doesn't help. It's not supposed to help. It's supposed to make you angry. Kael's eyes were intense now, focused entirely on her. Because anger is useful. Anger keeps you moving forward when grief tries to drag you down. Anger makes you strong. Or it makes you reckless. Only if you let it control you instead of the other way around. He stood, moving to the window. Outside, the compound was settling into evening, lights coming on, people moving between buildings. I was angry for a long time after my father died. Angry at him for being weak, angry at the people who took advantage of that weakness, angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. What changed? I learned to use it, to channel it into something productive instead of destructive. He glanced back at her. That's what I'm offering you, Arya. A way to turn your anger into action, into justice. And power for you in the process. And power for me in the process, he agreed without shame. Like I said, strategic, not personal. But there was something personal in the way he looked at her, in the way he kept coming back to this room when he could have assigned someone else to check on her. Something that made Arya's instincts prickle with wariness, and something else she didn't want to examine too closely. Tell me about the files, Kael said, returning to business. The ones you hid. What exactly did you find? So she told him. Slowly at first, her voice still rough, but gaining strength as the words poured out. She described the ledgers, the falsified shipment records, the medical supplies that never reached the clinic. The names involved, not just Marcus, but her Uncle Thomas and the enforcer chief, a man named Derek, who'd been with the pack for 20 years. They were systematic about it, she said. Small amounts at first, easy to miss or explain away, but over time, it grew. The last entry I saw was from 2 weeks ago, 15,000 in medical resources diverted and sold to a black market distributor. Kael's expression was stone. While your pack's clinic struggled with basic supplies. While Elder Morris died from an infection that could have been treated with antibiotics we supposedly couldn't afford. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. While the Hayes family lost their son because we didn't have the equipment to handle his injuries, while everyone kept trusting that their leaders had their best interests at heart. And you have photos of all this? On my phone, hidden in the Elder's hall. She described the location in detail, watched Kael commit every word to memory. Can you really get to it without being caught? I can get anywhere I need to be, he said simply. The question is timing. If I move too soon, Marcus might realize you're alive and change everything. If I wait too long, he might find it himself. He won't think to look there. It's too obvious, in a way, right under everyone's noses. They'll search my room, my usual spots, but a childhood hiding place in the ceremonial hall? She shook her head. Marcus doesn't think like that. He's smart, but he's not creative. Then we have time. Kael moved toward the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow starts your real recovery. Physical therapy, assessment, baseline testing. Dr. Reeves is going to push you hard. Good. I want to be pushed. He paused at the threshold. The council assigned your guard, by the way. You'll meet her tomorrow. Her? Maya. Kael's expression was unreadable. She volunteered, said if anyone was going to watch you, it should be someone who won't be charmed into complacency. Arya's stomach sank. She hates me. She doesn't trust you. There's a difference. And honestly, having someone suspicious watching your back isn't the worst thing. She'll keep you alive even if she doesn't like you, because that's what she does. Comforting. It's supposed to be realistic. He studied her for a moment longer. Sleep well, Arya. You're going to need it. He left, and Arya was alone with her thoughts and the quiet beeping of medical equipment. Tomorrow she'd meet Maya, the woman who thought she was a trap waiting to spring. Tomorrow, she'd start the brutal process of rebuilding strength in a body that had been broken. Tomorrow, she'd take the first real steps toward becoming someone who could stand against Marcus and win. But tonight, alone in this room, in enemy territory, Arya let herself acknowledge the truth she'd been avoiding. She was terrified. Not of the training, or Maya's suspicion, or even the eventual confrontation with Marcus. She was terrified of trusting Kael Draven, of believing that this alliance would hold, of letting herself hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone who wouldn't betray her when it mattered most. Because she'd trusted before. She'd believed before, and it had nearly killed her. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, her dreams were full of snow and blood and Marcus's smile as he walked away. Dr. Reeves cleared her for limited activity 3 days later, and Arya met Maya that same afternoon. The woman who entered her room was tall, lean, and moved like violence waiting to happen. She had sharp features, short dark hair, and eyes that assessed Arya with the cold precision of someone inventorying potential threats. Up, Maya said without preamble. Time to see if you can actually walk, or if you're planning to be dead weight. Arya pushed herself out of bed, biting back a groan as her ribs protested. The brace on her arm had been removed yesterday, but everything still hurt in ways that made her want to curl up and quit. Maya watched her stand with no sympathy whatsoever. Pathetic. You're telling me the girl who supposedly survived a murder attempt can barely get to her feet? I'm healing. You're slow. Maya moved to the door. Come on. Training grounds. Let's see what we're actually working with. The walk to the training grounds took 10 minutes and felt like 10 miles. Arya refused to show weakness, refused to let Maya see her limping, but by the time they arrived, sweat was running down her back and her vision was spotting at the edges. The training grounds were outside, a large cleared area surrounded by forest. Combat circles marked in the dirt, practice dummies, weapons racks. A dozen wolves were already there, running drills or sparring. They all stopped when Maya and Arya appeared. Eyes on your own work, Maya barked, and the training resumed, though Arya could feel the covert glances. Everyone was curious about the Vance girl their alpha had brought home. Kyle was there, working with a younger male on defensive positioning. When he saw them, he dismissed his student and crossed the grounds. How's she doing? He asked Maya. Like she's made of glass and held together with wishes. This is what you're risking the pack for. This is what she looks like today. Give her a week. A week? Maya laughed harshly. Kale, if Marcus comes for her in a week, she'll still be useless. She needs months of recovery, minimum. Then we'll make sure Marcus doesn't come for her in a week. Kale turned to Arya. Think you can handle an assessment? Nothing strenuous, just basics. Everything in her screamed to say no, to admit she wasn't ready. But Maya was watching with that skeptical expression, and something stubborn in Arya refused to prove her right. I can handle it. Liar, Maya muttered, but she moved to the combat circle. Come on, let's get this over with. The assessment was brutal. Not because Maya hit her, she didn't, following Kyle's clear instructions to keep it non-contact, but because every movement exposed how weak Arya had become, how much damage Marcus had done. Her balance was wrong. Her reflexes were slow. When Maya feinted left, Arya went right a full second too late. When asked to demonstrate a basic defensive stance, her ribs wouldn't let her twist properly, and her legs shook from the effort of holding position. 20 minutes in, she collapsed to her knees, gasping. Enough, Kyle said quietly. She barely started, Maya protested, and she's 3 days out from nearly dying. Enough! Maya stepped back, but her expression said everything she didn't. This girl was hopeless, weak, exactly the liability she'd predicted. Arya wanted to scream, wanted to rage at the unfairness of it all. She'd been competent before Marcus. Not exceptional maybe, but trained enough to hold her own in pack sparring. Now she could barely stand for 30 minutes without collapsing. Look at me, Kyle's voice cut through her spiral. He'd crouched beside her, forcing her to meet his eyes. This isn't permanent. This is just today. Tomorrow you'll be stronger. Next week, stronger still. But only if you don't push yourself so hard you break all over again. I need to be ready, she said desperately. When we face Marcus, you need to be alive and functional. That's it. The rest comes with time and work. His hand settled on her shoulder, steady and warm. Dr. Reeves warned me you'd do this. Push too hard. Try to heal faster than your body can manage. Don't. But Maya's right. I'm useless like this. Maya's cautious. There's a difference. He stood, offering his hand. Come on, that's enough for today. We'll try again tomorrow. But as Arya let him pull her to her feet, she caught Maya's expression, disgust mixed with something that looked almost like pity. And she knew that to everyone watching, she looked exactly like what Marcus had tried to make her. Broken, weak, finished. That night, alone in her room, Arya made a decision. She'd follow Kyle's advice during official training. Rest when told to rest, pace herself appropriately. But in the hours between when no one was watching, she'd push herself. Build back the strength she'd lost. Prove that she was more than the shattered thing Marcus had tried to create. It started small. Push-ups against the wall when her ribs wouldn't allow floor work. Slow walks around the medical wing at night. Stretches that made everything hurt but gradually expanded her range of motion. Dr. Reeves caught her on day 5 doing squats in her room at 2 in the morning. Are you trying to undo everything I've fixed? The doctor demanded, but there was something like respect in her eyes. I'm trying to not be helpless. There's a difference between helpless and healing. Sit down before you tear something. But she didn't report Arya to Kael, didn't stop her from continuing the secret training, just adjusted the medical plan to account for the extra activity and gave her supplements that would help rebuild muscle faster. You're going to hurt yourself, Dr. Reeves warned. Probably badly, and when you do, I'm going to tell you I told you so while I patch you up. I can live with that. Yeah, the doctor said dryly. I'm starting to see why Kael likes you. The word stuck with Arya long after Dr. Reeves left, why Kael liked her. Did he? Or was it still just strategy, cold calculation wrapped in occasional gentle words? She didn't know. Wasn't sure she wanted to know. What she knew was that every day she got a little stronger. Every day the pain receded a little more. And every day, the memory of Marcus standing over her in that basement became fuel instead of trauma. On day 8, Maya caught her doing pull-ups on the doorframe at dawn. You're supposed to be resting, Maya said flatly. Arya dropped to the ground, breathing hard. I was. Now I'm training. Kael know about this? No, and you're not going to tell him. Maya's eyebrows rose. That's not how this works. I'm your guard. If you're doing something stupid, he needs to know. Then tell him. But while you're at it, tell him I managed 50 wall push-ups yesterday. Tell him I can hold a defensive stance for 3 minutes now instead of 30 seconds. Tell him I'm not the liability you predicted I'd be. Something flickered in Maya's expression. Not warmth, nothing that generous, but maybe a grudging acknowledgement that Arya had more spine than she'd credited. 50 push-ups is nothing, Maya said. A trainee could do twice that. Then I guess I'd better work harder. They stared at each other, the challenge hanging between them like a blade. Finally, Maya stepped back. Fine. You want to train like you've got something to prove? Be at the grounds at dawn tomorrow. Real training, not this amateur hour garbage you're doing alone. And when you collapse, because you will collapse, don't expect sympathy. She left before Arya could respond, but the message was clear. Maya was giving her a chance. One chance to prove she was worth the risk Kael had taken. Arya intended to make it count. Dawn came cold and unforgiving. Arya made it to the training grounds before Maya arrived, her body aching but her will harder than it had been since Marcus's basement. Maya appeared as the sun touched the horizon, carrying 2 practice staffs. She tossed one to Arya without warning. Arya caught it, her injured arm screaming protest but holding. Basics first, Maya said, settling into a ready stance. Footwork, balance, reaction time. You're going to hate me by the end of this. I already hate you. Good. Hatred's motivating. Maya's smile was sharp. Now move. The next hour was everything Maya had promised. Brutal, exhausting, and completely without mercy. She corrected Arya's stance with sharp jabs from her staff, critiqued every movement, and showed no patience for weakness or excuses. But she also taught, really taught, the kind of detailed, hands-on instruction that came from someone who knew combat inside and out and had actually bothered to learn how to pass that knowledge on. By the time other wolves started arriving for morning training, Arya was drenched in sweat, covered in bruises from where Maya's staff had connected, and closer to crying from exhaustion than she'd been since waking up in Kael's medical wing. She was also standing, still moving, still fighting. Kael arrived last, taking in the scene with one sharp glance. Arya clearly pushed to her limits, Maya looking grimly satisfied, the practice staffs that weren't supposed to be used for another week at least. Maya, he said quietly. A word. They moved to the side, voices low but tense. Arya couldn't hear what was said, but she saw Maya's aggressive gestures, saw Kael's expression go harder and harder until finally, he said something that made Maya go still. Then he walked over to Arya and took the staff from her hands. Enough, he said. You're done for today. I can keep going. No, you can't. You're shaking. You're about to pass out, and you've undone half of Dr. Reeves's work. His voice was controlled, but anger simmered underneath. I told you to pace yourself. And I am. I'm just pacing faster than you expected. That's not pacing. That's self-destruction. He handed the staff to Maya without looking at her. Go eat. Rest. I don't want to see you back here until tomorrow. Arya wanted to argue, wanted to prove she could handle more, but her legs chose that moment to buckle, and only Kael's quick reflexes kept her from hitting the ground. Stubborn idiot, he muttered, but his hands were gentle as he steadied her. Maya, help her back to medical. Make sure Dr. Reeves knows what happened. She asked for this, Maya said, but she moved to Arya's other side, taking some of her weight. I know. Kale's eyes found Arya's, and what she saw there wasn't anger. It was something closer to understanding. But asking for something and being ready for it are different things. Learn the difference before you get yourself killed. They made it halfway back to the medical wing before Arya's legs gave out completely. Maya caught her without comment, just shifted position and kept walking, half carrying her the rest of the way. You're tougher than you look, Maya said finally, depositing Arya on her bed. Stupider too, but tough. It wasn't quite approval, but it wasn't contempt either. Progress, Arya thought distantly, before exhaustion pulled her under. She woke to find Kale sitting in his usual chair, reading something on his tablet. When he noticed her eyes open, he set it aside. Dr. Reeves says you pulled a muscle in your back and aggravated your ribs. She's not happy with either of us. I can live with that. Why are you doing this? The question was direct, demanding honesty. And don't tell me it's just about getting stronger. You're driving yourself like you've got a deadline. Arya was quiet for a long moment, organizing thoughts that had been chaos for days. Because every minute I'm weak, Marcus is out there free. Every day I spend recovering is a day those families suffer. Every hour I can't fight back is an hour he wins. So you're trying to heal faster by breaking yourself. That's not logical, Arya. No, she agreed. It's desperate. But desperation is all I have right now. Kale leaned forward, his expression intense. Then let me give you something else. Give you a timeline, a plan, something concrete to work toward instead of this vague need to be ready for everything immediately. What kind of timeline? The regional council meets in 6 weeks. All the major alphas, all the territory representatives. It's the perfect venue to expose Marcus, public, formal, impossible to dismiss or cover up. He pulled up a calendar on his tablet, showing her the date. 6 weeks to heal, to train, to gather evidence and build our case. 6 weeks until you stand in front of everyone and tell them exactly what was done to you. 6 weeks. It felt like forever and not nearly long enough all at once. And if I'm not ready in 6 weeks, then we wait for the next meeting, or we find another way. His voice was firm. But we don't rush this, Arya. We do it right, or we don't do it at all. Because if we move too soon and Marcus slips away, you won't get another chance. He'll disappear, cover his tracks, and you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. He was right. She hated it, but he was right. Okay, she said finally. 6 weeks. We do it right. Good. Kale stood. Now get some actual rest. Tomorrow we start a real training schedule. One that won't put you back in medical every other day. Maya will work with you in the mornings. I'll take over in the afternoons. Physical conditioning, combat training, and... He paused. Testimony preparation. Testimony preparation? Standing in front of the council and accusing another alpha of corruption isn't like training. It's performance, politics, and precision all at once. You'll need to know how to present evidence, how to handle challenges, how to stay calm when Marcus tries to discredit you. His eyes were serious. Because he will try. He'll call you a liar, a traitor, unstable. He'll twist everything you say and try to make you look like a scorned woman making false accusations. The thought made Arya's stomach clench, but she forced herself to nod. Then teach me how to beat him at that too. I will. Kale moved toward the door, then stopped. And Arya, what Maya said this morning about you being tougher than you look. She's right, but tough doesn't mean invincible. Remember that. He left, and Arya was alone with 6 weeks stretching ahead of her, like both a promise and a threat. 6 weeks to become someone who could stand against Marcus and win. 6 weeks to turn betrayal into justice. 6 weeks to prove that the girl left to die in the snow was stronger than anyone, including herself, had ever imagined. She closed her eyes and started counting days. The days blurred together into a rhythm of pain and progress that Arya learned to measure in small victories rather than grand transformations. Day 12. She held a plank position for 90 seconds without her ribs giving out. Day 18, she landed a clean hit on Maya during sparring, earning a grunt of surprise and what might have been approval. Day 23. She ran the perimeter of the compound without stopping, her lungs burning but functional. But it was day 27 when everything changed. Arya was in the training grounds, working through a complex footwork drill Kyle had designed, when Riker burst through the tree line at a dead run. His face was pale, his eyes wild, and the scent of blood clung to him like a second skin. Kyle! He skidded to a stop, breathing hard. We've got a situation. Border Patrol found something. Kale was across the grounds in seconds, Maya right behind him. Arya hesitated, knowing she should stay back, knowing this wasn't her business. But something in Riker's expression made her follow anyway. They gathered near the equipment shed, voices low and urgent. 3 bodies, Riker was saying, dumped just inside our territory, right past marker 19. Throats cut, no identification, but they're wearing Vance pack colors. Arya's blood went cold. How long dead? Kale's voice was controlled, clinical. Maybe 6 hours. The blood's still tacky. Riker glanced at Arya, then back to Kale. Boss, there's a message carved into one of them. Show me. It's not. Kyle, it's meant for her. Riker's jaw was tight. It says, return what's mine. The world tilted. Arya felt Maya's hand on her arm, steadying, but her focus was entirely on Kael's face, watching the calculation happen behind his eyes. He knows, she breathed. Marcus knows I'm alive. Or he suspects. Kael was already moving, issuing orders in a voice that cut through the shocked silence. Riker, get a team to secure the bodies. Full documentation, photos, evidence collection, everything. Maya, double the perimeter guards. No one in or out without my clearance. His eyes found Arya. You, medical wing, now. I'm not hiding. Well, that wasn't a request. The alpha command in his voice made her wolf whimper in submission, but Arya gritted her teeth and held her ground. If Marcus is sending messages, I need to see them. I need to know what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with is a territorial violation and 3 dead wolves. Kale's expression was granite. What you need to do is stay alive and out of sight until I figure out how much he actually knows. Kale, now, Arya. Maya's grip tightened on her arm. Come on, don't make this harder than it needs to be. The walk back to the medical wing felt like a retreat, and Arya hated every step of it. But as Maya closed the door behind them, her expression shifted from guard to something almost conspiratorial. You want to see the bodies, Maya said. It wasn't a question. I need to know what Marcus is doing, what he's planning. Kyle will tell you. After he's filtered it, sanitized it, decided what I can handle. Arya met Maya's eyes. I'm not fragile. I'm not going to break because I see something ugly. I've already lived through ugly. Maya considered this, her expression unreadable. Then she moved to the window, checking the courtyard below. Dr. Reeves is in surgery for another hour. The guards change shift in 20 minutes. If you were going to do something stupid, that would be your window. It took Arya a moment to process what Maya was actually saying. You're helping me? I'm telling you facts about the compound schedule. What you do with that information is your choice. Maya turned back, and there was something hard in her eyes. But if you get caught, I don't know anything about it. Clear? Crystal. And Arya? Maya's voice dropped. Whatever you see out there, it's going to be bad. Marcus is sending a message, and messages written in blood are never subtle. You sure you're ready for that? Arya thought about the basement, about Marcus's fist connecting with her ribs, about waking up in the snow, waiting to die. I'm sure. Maya nodded once and left, and Arya was alone with 20 minutes to plan something incredibly reckless. The guard shift change happened exactly on schedule. Arya slipped out of the medical wing through a side door she'd noted during her early morning walks, keeping to the shadows as she made her way toward the perimeter. The compound was designed with security in mind, but she'd spent 4 weeks learning its rhythms, its blind spots, the places where patrol routes overlapped and left brief gaps. She made it to marker 19 in 12 minutes, her heart pounding, and every instinct screaming that this was a terrible idea. The bodies were covered with tarps, but the blood had soaked through, dark and spreading. Kael's team was working methodically, taking photos, marking evidence. No one noticed her approach until she was almost on top of them. Who the hell? One of the wolves spun, hand going to his weapon before recognition stopped him cold. You're supposed to be in medical. I need to see. Kael's orders were clear. No one but authorized. Please. The word came out raw. If Marcus is killing people to get to me, I need to see what that looks like. I need to understand what I'm fighting. The wolf, she thought his name was Derek, different from the Derek in her old pack, hesitated. Then he stepped aside. 2 minutes. That's all you get before I call this in. Arya moved to the nearest body and pulled back the tarp. The woman underneath had been young, maybe early 20s. Her throat was opened in a ragged line, the cut deep enough to nearly separate her head from her body. But it was her face that made Arya's stomach lurch. She recognized her. Sarah Chen, a lower-tier pack member who worked in the kitchens. Quiet, kind, had never hurt anyone in her life. And carved into her forehead, crude but deliberate, was a single word. Thief. What did they steal? Arya asked quietly. Derek shifted uncomfortably. According to Vance pack law, you were Marcus's bonded, or supposed to be. By leaving before the ceremony, you stole yourself from him. Makes you property in dispute. The casual way he said it made Arya want to scream, but she forced herself to move to the second body instead. This one was older, a man she vaguely recognized from boundary patrols. His chest had been opened, ribs spread wide, and something was missing from the cavity. Arya didn't need to ask what. The message carved into his stomach spelled it out. Heartless. They helped you, Derek said quietly. That's the accusation anyway. That these three knew you were leaving and didn't report it, didn't try to stop you. Therefore, they're traitors to the pack. They didn't know anything, Arya's voice cracked. Sarah worked in the kitchens. I barely spoke to her. Marcus is just killing random people to make a point. Yeah, that's what we figured too. The third body was the worst. Because Arya knew her, really knew her. Emma Vance, her second cousin, only 17 years old. The girl who used to follow Arya around at pack gatherings, who'd asked 1,000 questions about bonding ceremonies and what it was like to be chosen by a beta. Her eyes were gone. Just empty sockets, blood-crusted and horrific. And across her chest, carved deep, she sees nothing. Arya turned away and vomited into the snow, her whole body shaking. You've seen enough, Derek said, not unkindly. Come on, let's get you back before what? Kael's voice cut through the clearing like ice. He stood at the tree line, his expression absolutely murderous. Before I find out my orders were ignored, and the one person who absolutely cannot be seen near this scene is standing here contaminating my crime scene? Derek went pale. Alpha, I can explain to Maya. She's handling security protocols from now on. Kael's eyes never left Arya. You, with me, now. They walked back to the compound in silence, Kael's anger a physical presence beside her. But when they reached the medical wing, he didn't take her inside. Instead, he steered her toward the main building, up 3 flights of stairs and into an office that was clearly his, sparse, functional, and currently empty except for the 2 of them. Sit, he ordered. Arya sat. Kael moved to the window, staring out at the compound below, his shoulders rigid with tension. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled, but barely. What you did was unbelievably stupid. I know. You violated direct orders, put yourself at risk, and potentially exposed yourself to anyone who might have been watching that scene. If Marcus has people in my pack, and we have to assume he might, you just confirmed that you're alive and exactly where to find you. I needed to see, you needed to trust me. He spun to face her, and for the first time since she'd met him, Kael Draven looked truly angry. Not the cold calculation she was used to, but real, hot rage. You needed to stay safe and let me handle the investigation. That's what you needed to do. Safe. Arya stood, her own anger rising to match his. Those people are dead because of me. Sarah, Emma, that guard whose name I don't even know. They're dead because Marcus is trying to hurt me. And you want me to stay locked in a room while he carves messages into their bodies? Yes, because that's exactly what he wants you to do. Rush out, expose yourself, make a mistake he can exploit. Kael closed the distance between them. Marcus is baiting you, Arya. He's killing randomly and blaming you for it, trying to force you into revealing yourself before you're ready, and you just fell for it. The words hit like a slap. Because he was right, and she knew it. I can't just hide, she said. but her voice was smaller now. Those people are dead. Nothing you do will change that. His tone gentled slightly. I know it's hard. I know you feel responsible. But the best way to honor them is to stay alive long enough to make Marcus pay for what he did. Not just to you, but to them. To everyone he's hurt. Arya sank back into the chair, the fight draining out of her. He killed a 17-year-old girl, KL. Cut out her eyes and left her like trash. I know, I saw the reports. She used to ask me about bonding ceremonies. Used to practice her formal greetings in case she got chosen someday. Her voice cracked. And now she's dead because Marcus wants to send me a message. Kael was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to his desk, pulling out a file she hadn't noticed before. There's something you need to see. I was going to wait, but he handed her the file. This arrived 3 hours before the bodies were found. Courier dropped it at the boundary line and disappeared. Arya opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper typed in Marcus's precise, formal style. To Alpha Kyle Draven of the Draven territory. It has come to my attention that you may be harboring property that rightfully belongs to the Vance pack. Specifically, one Arya Vance, who is bound by formal contract to undergo a bonding ceremony before her untimely and suspicious disappearance. While I appreciate that territorial disputes can be complicated, I must remind you that interfering with another pack's internal affairs is a violation of regional council law. Miss Vance is a member of my pack, subject to our laws and customs, and any attempt to prevent her return will be considered an act of aggression. I am prepared to be reasonable about this situation. Return Miss Vance unharmed within 7 days, and we can avoid escalation. Continue to harbor her, and I will be forced to take more direct action to recover my property. The 3 individuals who aided in her escape have been dealt with according to pack law. Consider them a demonstration of my seriousness regarding this matter. I look forward to your cooperation. Marcus Thorne, Beta and Acting Alpha, Vance Territory. Acting Alpha, Arya read aloud, her mind racing. What happened to my father? That's what I've been trying to find out. Kale pulled up something on his computer, turning the screen toward her. Your father stepped down 4 days ago. Officially, it's a health issue. Early onset dementia, according to the pack physician. Unofficially, Marcus forced him out. The pieces were clicking together, horrible and inevitable. He was the only one who could have challenged Marcus's authority. With him gone and me supposedly dead, Marcus has total control. Not total. There's still the Council of Elders, the other senior pack members, who are either in on it or too scared to challenge him. Arya read the letter again, her hands shaking with rage. He's calling me property, like I'm a stolen car he's trying to recover. That's exactly how he's framing it, and legally he's not entirely wrong. Kale's expression was grim. Bonding contracts are binding under pack law. You signed one, or your father did on your behalf. Until that contract is formally dissolved or the ceremony is completed, you are technically bound to Marcus. That's insane. That's tradition, and tradition is what the council respects most. He closed the file. Which is why we can't just ignore this letter. If I don't respond, Marcus can claim I violated protocol, but if I admit you're here, he'll demand your immediate return. So what do we do? Kyle was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. We escalate. We force this into the open before Marcus is ready for it. You said we had 6 weeks. The council meeting was the plan when I thought we had time to build a perfect case, but Marcus just changed the timeline. Kale pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. There's a provision in council law for emergency sessions. They can be called when there's an urgent territorial dispute that threatens regional stability. You think he'll agree to that? I think he has to. The letter he sent makes this official. And once it's official, it has to be resolved through proper channels. Kale's smile was sharp. He wanted to force my hand. Fine. Let's see how he handles it when I call his bluff and demand a formal hearing. Arya's heart was pounding. I'm not ready. We don't have all the evidence yet. We haven't retrieved the files. We have enough. We have you, alive and able to testify. We have 3 dead pack members he just admitted to killing. We have his letter claiming you as property. Kyle met her eyes. It's not perfect, but it's enough to start. And more importantly, it puts him on the defensive instead of us. He'll deny everything, say I'm lying, that I ran away because I was unstable. Let him. Because while he's denying and defending, I'm going to send someone to retrieve those files from the Elders' Hall. And when we present them at the hearing, in front of every major alpha in the region, he won't be able to explain them away. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but Arya could see the logic in it. Take control of the narrative before Marcus could spin it further. Make him react instead of act. When? She asked. I'll send the request to the council tonight. They have to respond within 48 hours. Assuming they approve, and they will, this is too explosive to ignore, we're looking at maybe 10 days until the hearing. 10 days. Not 6 weeks. 10 days to prepare for the most important moment of her life. I need those files, Arya said. Everything falls apart without them. I know. I'm sending my best retrieval specialist tonight. Cale pulled up a photo on his phone. A woman, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and a face built for blending into backgrounds. Her name is Sloane. She's gotten in and out of more secure locations than I can count. If anyone can retrieve your phone without being caught, it's her. And if she is caught, then she knows nothing about you or why she's there. As far as anyone will know, she's just a thief who picked the wrong target. Kael's voice was steady. But she won't be caught. Trust me. Trust. That word again. Arya looked at the letter, at Marcus's precise signature, at the casual way he'd admitted to murder while demanding her return. 10 days from now, she'd be standing in front of him. 10 days from now, everything would either fall apart or finally start to come together. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Cale nodded and reached for his computer. I'll draft the request. You should get some rest. The next week and a half is going to be brutal. But as Arya stood to leave, a thought occurred to her. Kael, the letter says 7 days. What happens when that deadline passes and I'm not returned? His expression went cold. Then Marcus makes good on his threat to take more direct action, which probably means an attack on this compound. So we're not just preparing for a hearing, we're preparing for war. We've been preparing for war since the moment I pulled you out of the snow. Cale's eyes met hers, hard and determined. The only question is whether it's a legal war fought in a council chamber or a bloody one fought on our doorstep. I'm betting on legal. But either way, we'll be ready. Arya left the office with her mind spinning, but she made it exactly 3 steps before Maya materialized from a side hallway. You saw the bodies, Maya said without preamble. Yes. And now you understand what we're really dealing with. I understood before. This just made it clearer. Arya kept walking, but Maya fell into step beside her. Marcus is going to keep killing people until he gets what he wants. You know that, right? Those 3 won't be the last. Every day you stay here, every day this drags out, more people die. Arya stopped walking. Is there a point to this, or are you just trying to make me feel worse? The point is that you need to be ready for what happens when you stand in front of the council. Maya's voice was hard. Because if you freeze, if you hesitate, if you show one moment of weakness, Marcus wins, and everyone who died for you died for nothing. I won't freeze. You don't know that. You've never done anything like this before. You've never had to stand in front of a room full of alphas and accuse one of them of corruption and murder. Maya stepped closer. I'm not trying to be cruel, Arya. I'm trying to prepare you for reality. Because Kael believes in you, and I need to know that belief isn't misplaced. The challenge hung between them, clear and direct. What do you want me to say? Arya asked quietly. That I'm terrified? I am. That I might fail? I know. But I'm still going to try because the alternative is letting Marcus get away with everything he's done. Maya studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good. Fear is smart. Overconfidence gets you killed. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you might actually pull this off. But that doesn't mean I'm going to make it easy on you. Starting tomorrow, we're doubling your training. If you're going to face Marcus in 10 days, you need to be able to hold your ground no matter what he throws at you. I can handle it. We'll see. That night, Arya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed watching the minutes tick by, thinking about Emma's empty eye sockets, about Sarah's carved forehead, about the 3rd victim whose name she still didn't know. Thinking about the 7-day deadline and what would happen when it passed. Thinking about standing in front of the council and finally telling the truth. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, she heard movement in the hallway. Quiet, careful footsteps that didn't match any of the usual patrol patterns. She was out of bed in seconds, pressing herself against the wall beside the door, every muscle coiled and ready. The footsteps stopped outside her room. A soft knock. "Arya, it's me." Kael's voice. She opened the door to find him standing there in dark clothing, a tactical pack slung over his shoulder. "I'm going with Sloane," he said without preamble. "To retrieve the files. I need you to tell me exactly where to look." "You're going yourself. That's the only way to be sure it's done right." His expression was set, determined. "If Sloane gets caught, it's a theft. If I get caught, it's a territorial incursion. The first is a minor incident. The second is an act of war." "Then you definitely shouldn't go." "Wrong. I should go because I'm the only one who can talk our way out of it if something goes wrong. I'm an alpha. I can claim right of investigation under regional law, demand access to pack records, make enough legal noise that Marcus has to respond through proper channels instead of violence." It made a horrible kind of sense. "When are you leaving?" "Now. We'll be back before dawn." He pulled out his phone, opening a map. "Show me." Arya described the location in detail. The eastern wall of the Elder's Hall, 3 stones from the corner, 5 courses up. The loose stone that shifted if you pressed the right way, the small cavity behind it. "There's a chance someone found it," she warned. "If they searched the hall thoroughly enough, then we deal with that. But I don't think they did. Marcus is thorough, but he's also arrogant. He thinks you're dead, and dead people don't hide evidence." Kael studied the map a moment longer, then pocketed his phone. "Maya's in charge while I'm gone. Anything happens, anything at all, you do exactly what she says. Clear?" "Clear." He turned to go, then stopped. "Arya, if this goes wrong, if we don't make it back, you'll make it back. But if we don't, if something happens, you need to leave. Take the evidence we've already gathered and go to the council yourself. Don't wait, don't hesitate, just go." The thought of doing this without him made her stomach clench. "Kael, promise me." "I promise." He nodded once and left, his footsteps fading down the hallway. Arya returned to bed but didn't even pretend to sleep. Just lay there counting minutes, listening to the compound settle into late-night quiet, waiting for dawn and whatever it would bring. 3 hours passed, then 4. At 5:47 a.m., Maya burst through her door without knocking. "Get up, we have a problem." Arya was moving before Maya finished speaking. "What happened?" Kael and Sloane made it to the Elder's Hall. Got in, got the phone, got out. Maya's face was grim, but they were spotted on the way back. A Vance patrol picked up their scent and tracked them to the boundary line. They're pinned down at marker 15 with a dozen wolves closing in. Arya's world narrowed to a single point. "We have to help them." Kael's orders were to hold position. He doesn't want to escalate this into a full territorial conflict. He's going to get himself killed. Probably. But those are his orders. Maya grabbed Arya's arm. "Which means you stay here, stay safe, and prepare to run if this goes south." Everything in Arya screamed to argue, to fight, to do something. But Maya was right. Charging out there would only make things worse. Unless... "What if I give them what they want?" Arya said slowly. Maya's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Marcus wants me back. That's what this is about." "So what if I appear to surrender? Walk out there, draw their attention away from Kael, give him time to escape?" "That's suicide." "No, that's misdirection." Arya's mind was racing now, pieces falling into place. "I show myself, they focus on me, Kael gets clear, and once he's safe, I fight my way back before they can actually capture me." "You can't fight 12 wolves alone." "I don't have to. I just have to survive long enough for reinforcements to arrive." She met Maya's eyes. "You said you wanted to know if I was ready to hold my ground. Here's your chance to find out." Maya stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, she smiled, sharp and dangerous. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met, or the stupidest. Possibly both." "Is that a yes?" I'll give you 5 minutes before I bring the cavalry, which means you'd better make those 5 minutes count." Maya was already moving, pulling weapons from a locked cabinet. "You take the eastern approach. I'll position back up at the ridge. You draw them out. We close the trap." They armed quickly and moved quietly, slipping through the compound toward the boundary line. Arya could feel her heart trying to break through her ribs, could taste fear like metal on her tongue. But underneath the fear was something harder, something that had been building for 4 weeks of training and pain and preparing for exactly this moment. She wasn't the girl Marcus had thrown in the snow anymore. She was something else now, something sharper. They reached marker 15 just as dawn broke over the mountains. Arya could see them now, Kael and Sloane, backed against a boulder with hostile wolves forming a semicircle around them. One of the wolves was talking, his voice carrying across the distance. "Orders to bring you in for questioning, Alpha Draven. Trespassing on Vance territory, theft of pack property, possible kidnapping. You can come quietly, or we can do this the hard way." "I'm standing on neutral ground," Kael replied, his voice calm but carrying clear warning. "You want to talk, we talk. But no one crosses this line without starting something neither of our packs can finish. Your choice." The lead wolf, Arya recognized him now, Marcus's head enforcer, a brutal man named Garrett, gestured to his team. "Take them." Arya stepped out of the tree line. "Looking for me, Garrett?" Every head snapped toward her. She could see the shock register on Garrett's face, see Kael's expression shift from controlled calm to something close to panic. "Arya," Garrett breathed. "You're alive." Surprise. She walked forward slowly, hands visible and empty. "I hear Marcus wants me back." "Well, here I am." "Arya, don't," Kael started, but she cut him off with a look. "It's over, Kael. You tried to help me, and I appreciate it, but I'm not worth starting a war over." She turned back to Garrett. "You want to take me back to Marcus? Fine. Let them go, and I'll come quietly." Garrett's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Just like that? After everything?" "Just like that. I'm tired of running, tired of hiding. If Marcus wants to talk, we'll talk." She took another step forward. "But Kael and Sloane leave. Now. That's the deal." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Garrett smiled, and it was an ugly thing. "Marcus said you'd try something like this, said you'd probably try to play hero." He gestured to his wolves. "New plan. We take all 3 of them. Alpha Draven for trespassing, his accomplice for theft, and Arya for being Arya." The wolves moved forward as one, and Arya smiled. Wrong answer. She whistled, sharp and piercing, and the forest exploded. Maya hit them from the left with 4 wolves at her back. Riker appeared from the right with 6 more. They crashed into Garrett's team like a wave, and suddenly the ambush had been reversed. Arya didn't wait to watch. She was already moving, closing the distance to where Kael and Sloane were pinned. A Vance wolf tried to intercept her, but she dropped low, swept his legs, and kept running. Everything Maya had drilled into her, every painful morning of training, it all crystallized into pure action. She reached Kael just as he broke free from the boulder, the phone clutched in his hand. Their eyes met for a split second, his full of fury and relief in equal measure, before he shoved her behind him. "Get to the compound, now." "Not without you." "Arya." A wolf tackled her from the side, driving her into the snow. She rolled with it, using his momentum against him, and came up with her knife already moving, the blade caught him across the shoulder, not deep, just enough to make him back off, before someone else grabbed her from behind. The next 30 seconds were chaos. Fists, claws, snow flying. Arya fought like something wild and desperate, using every dirty trick Maya had taught her. When someone grabbed her hair, she slammed her head back into his nose. When hands closed around her throat, she drove her knee up hard and fast. But there were too many of them. Even with reinforcements, they were outnumbered. "Fall back," Kyle's voice cut through the melee. "Everyone back to the compound." They retreated in stages, fighting every step. Arya felt something hit her ribs, a fist or a rock, she couldn't tell, and pain exploded through her chest. But she kept moving, kept fighting, because stopping meant capture and capture meant death. They made it across the boundary line into Draven territory just as more wolves appeared, these wearing Draven colors, responding to Maya's call. The Vance wolves stopped at the border, smart enough to know that crossing now would mean war. Garrett stood at the line, breathing hard, blood running from a cut above his eye. "This isn't over, Draven. Not even close." "No," Kyle agreed, equally bloody but standing firm. It's not. See you at the council hearing. They held position until the Vance wolves finally withdrew, disappearing into the forest like shadows. Only then did Kyle turn to Arya, and the look on his face made her take an instinctive step backward. What, he said very quietly, did you think you were doing? Saving your life. By walking into a trap? By offering yourself up like bait? It worked, didn't it? It nearly got you captured. His control was slipping, real anger breaking through. Do you have any idea what would have happened if they'd gotten their hands on you? If this had gone wrong by even 30 seconds? But it didn't. We won. We got the files. Everyone made it out. She pulled the phone from his hand, the screen cracked but still functional. We have what we need. Kale stared at her, and for a moment she thought he might actually shake her. But instead he did something unexpected. He laughed. Not humor, something darker, edged with hysteria and relief. You're insane. You're completely, utterly insane. Probably. And that, Maya said, appearing beside them with blood on her knuckles and something like respect in her eyes, was the bravest, stupidest thing I've ever seen anyone do. Did I make the 5 minutes? Arya asked. You made 4.5. Close enough. They walked back to the compound together, battered and bloody but alive. But Arya's ribs were screaming, her knuckles were split, and she was pretty sure she'd torn something in her shoulder. But the phone was secure in her pocket, and Kyle was alive, and they'd sent Marcus a message he couldn't ignore. She wasn't his property. She wasn't his victim. She was a threat. Dr. Reeves didn't bother hiding her frustration as she wrapped Arya's ribs for the second time in a month. You tore the muscle tissue that was finally starting to heal. You've got 3 new fractures on top of the old ones. And whatever you did to your shoulder, she probed the joint, making Arya hiss through her teeth, has set your recovery back at least 2 weeks. Can you fix it in time for the hearing? Arya asked. Can I perform medical miracles in 9 days? No. Can I pump you full of enough anti-inflammatories and painkillers that you can stand upright without screaming? Probably. Dr. Reeves's hands were efficient but not gentle. But it's going to hurt. A lot. I can handle pain. Yes, I've noticed. The doctor tied off the bandage with more force than strictly necessary. What you can't seem to handle is basic self-preservation. Kale told me what you did, walking into an ambush like that. It worked. This time. Next time, you might not be so lucky. Dr. Reeves stepped back, studying Arya with something that looked almost like concern. You're not invincible, you know. And the way you're going, you'll burn yourself out before you ever make it to that council chamber. But Arya was already thinking past the pain, past the injuries. They had the phone. They had the evidence. The hearing was in 9 days, and Marcus had just shown his hand by sending wolves after Kyle. Everything was falling into place, except for one thing. I need to see what's on the phone, she said. Later. Right now you need rest. Now, before Marcus has time to change anything, before he can cover his tracks further. Arya met the doctor's eyes. Please. Dr. Reeves sighed, but didn't argue. 20 minutes later, Arya was back in Kyle's office, the cracked phone sitting on his desk between them. Maya stood by the door, arms crossed. Riker worked at a laptop, downloading the files through a forensic recovery program that would preserve the data even if the phone died completely. Okay, Riker said finally. I've got everything. Photos, documents, even some encrypted files that... Hang on. His fingers flew across the keyboard. These aren't just financial records. There's correspondence here, emails, text messages. Kyle leaned forward. Between who? Marcus and someone named Derek Vance. Looks like they were coordinating the supply diversions, deciding which shipments to intercept. Riker's expression darkened as he read. And here's one from your Uncle Thomas. He's asking Marcus to increase the percentages because he's got debts to settle. Arya felt sick. Her uncle. Her father's own brother, helping to steal from their pack. Keep going, Kale said. Riker clicked through more files. Financial transfers, offshore accounts, lists of black market buyers. He paused. And, Jesus, there's a whole folder labeled Cleanup. It's full of instructions on how to handle anyone who asks too many questions. Anyone specific mentioned? Maya asked. Yeah, there's a whole section on Arya. You might not want to hear this. Read it, she said flatly. Riker hesitated, then started reading. Subject: a V problem. From Marcus to Derek. Says she's asking about the Hayes boys' medical records. Getting too close. Need to accelerate bonding timeline and bring her fully under control before she digs deeper. Once we're bonded, any accusations she makes can be dismissed as marital discord. If she refuses the ceremony, we move to contingency. The room went silent. There's more, Riker said quietly. Another email from 2 weeks before the ceremony. A V found the ledgers. She knows. Attempted confrontation. Contingency activated. We'll handle personally. Make it look natural. Natural. Like finding a body in the snow was natural. Like a young woman dying from hypothermia after getting lost was just a tragic accident. He planned it, Arya breathed. Not just the beating, not just the dump. He planned the whole thing from the moment I found the first ledger. Looks that way, Kyle said, his voice hard. Which means this wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of panic. This was premeditated, attempted murder. That changes everything. Maya whistled low. The Council doesn't forgive that, ever. You kill in self-defense? In combat, fine. But calculated murder of a pack member? That's exile at minimum. Execution if the evidence is solid enough. The evidence is solid, Riker said, still scrolling. There's years of this stuff. Detailed records of every theft, every payoff, every threat. He looked up at KL. Boss, this isn't just corruption. This is organized crime on a massive scale. KL stood, pacing to the window. How many people were involved? Directly? Marcus, Derek, and Thomas Vance. But there are references to others who knew and looked the other way. At least a dozen names, maybe more. So half the Vance leadership was either actively stealing or passively enabling it. Kale's jaw tightened. No wonder they were willing to kill to keep it quiet. Arya's mind was spinning, trying to process the scope of it. Not just 3 corrupt men, but an entire system designed to bleed the pack dry while pretending to serve it. How many people had suffered? How many families had gone without because the resources that should have helped them had been stolen instead? We need to present this carefully, Maya said. The Council will want to see original documents, verify authenticity, make sure nothing's been tampered with. Already on it, Riker said. I'm creating certified copies with digital signatures and timestamps. Nothing can be disputed or dismissed. Kael turned back to Arya. This is enough. More than enough. When we walk into that hearing, we're not just accusing Marcus of trying to kill you. We're exposing systemic corruption that's been going on for years. Which means he'll fight harder, Arya said. He won't just defend himself. He'll try to destroy me first. Let him try. Kael's voice was cold. Because the moment he opens his mouth to attack you, we bury him with evidence he can't explain away. He wanted to play politics? Fine. We'll show him what happens when politics meets truth. The next 8 days were a controlled chaos of preparation. Kael worked with regional council lawyers to ensure every piece of evidence was properly documented and admissible. Maya drilled Arya on testimony protocols, teaching her how to speak clearly under pressure, how to handle hostile questioning, how to project confidence even when she felt none. And Arya trained. Despite Dr. Reeves's protests, despite the pain that made every movement an exercise in willpower, she trained. Because she couldn't shake the memory of Marcus standing over her in that basement, couldn't forget the certainty in his voice when he'd said she was nobody. She was going to prove him wrong. On day 5, a formal summons arrived from the regional council. The hearing was confirmed for 3 days from now to be held at neutral ground. The council hall in Blackstone territory, the oldest and most respected pack in the region. All parties were required to attend. All evidence was to be submitted 48 hours in advance for preliminary review. They're taking this seriously, Kael said, reading the summons. Chairman Wu himself is presiding. That's significant. Why? Arya asked. Because Wu doesn't preside over minor disputes. He only gets involved when the accusations are serious enough to potentially affect multiple packs. Kael set the summons down. This hearing isn't just about you anymore, Arya. It's about whether the Vance pack leadership violated pack law so severely that the entire pack needs restructuring. The weight of that settled over her. What happens to them? To the regular pack members who weren't involved? That depends on what the council finds. Best case, they install new leadership and require reforms. Worst case, he trailed off. Worst case what? Worst case, they dissolve the pack entirely and redistribute members to other territories. Kale's expression was grim. It's rare, but it's happened before. When corruption gets deep enough, sometimes the only solution is to start over completely. Arya thought about the people she'd grown up with. The families who had nothing to do with Marcus's schemes, who were just trying to survive in a system they didn't know was broken. That's not fair to them. No, it's not, but it might be necessary. Kael studied her carefully. Does that change anything for you, knowing that testifying might destroy your pack? She wanted to say yes, wanted to find some way to protect the innocent while still bringing Marcus down. But she'd seen Emma's empty eye sockets, Sarah's carved forehead. She'd felt Marcus's fist connecting with her ribs, heard his casual admission that he'd planned her death. My pack was already destroyed, Arya said quietly. Marcus did that when he chose power over people. I'm just making sure everyone sees what he did. On day 7, unexpected news arrived. Kael burst into the training grounds where Arya was working through defensive patterns with Maya, his expression somewhere between shock and satisfaction. We've got witnesses, he said without preamble. 3 Vance pack members just crossed into my territory requesting asylum. They say they have information about Marcus's activities and they're willing to testify. Arya's heart jumped. Who? Dr. Chen from your medical clinic, a supply coordinator named James Park, and, Kael paused, your father's personal aide, Margaret Ross. Margaret? Arya hadn't seen the older woman in months. Margaret had served her father for 20 years, managing his schedule and correspondence with quiet efficiency. Why would she? Because your father didn't step down voluntarily. Kael's voice was hard. According to Margaret, Marcus forced him out by threatening to expose some old financial mistakes your father made decades ago. Nothing illegal, but embarrassing enough to damage his reputation. Your father chose resignation over scandal, not knowing that Marcus was planning to take over completely. The betrayal cut deeper than Arya expected. Her father might have chosen Marcus for her, might have been blind to the corruption, but he'd also been manipulated, used. Where is he now? She asked. Under house arrest, according to Margaret. Marcus claimed it was for his own safety, but really it's to keep him from contradicting the official narrative. Kael pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. Margaret smuggled this out before she left. The photo showed Arya's father sitting in what looked like his study, but the windows were barred and a guard was visible in the doorway. He looked older than she remembered, smaller somehow, defeated. After the hearing, Arya said, her voice tight, after Marcus is dealt with, we get my father out of there. Agreed. Kael pocketed his phone. But first we need to prep these witnesses. Dr. Chen says she has records of medical supplies that were requisitioned but never arrived. Park has shipping manifests that don't match the official logs. And Margaret has documentation of Marcus's threats and the forced resignation. It was more than they'd hoped for, more than they'd needed. The case against Marcus was becoming airtight. But that night, as Arya lay in bed reviewing her testimony for the 100th time, a disturbing thought occurred to her. This was going too well, too smoothly. Marcus was smart, calculating, ruthless. He wouldn't just roll over and accept defeat because some evidence surfaced. He was planning something. She could feel it. The day before the hearing, Kael gathered everyone in the main hall, his pack, the witnesses from Vance territory, and Arya. The room was packed, tense, everyone understanding that tomorrow would change everything. I'm not going to pretend this will be easy, Kael said, his voice carrying to every corner. Marcus Thorne has resources, allies, and a strong motivation to make this go away. He'll fight dirty, he'll lie, manipulate, and do whatever it takes to discredit our witnesses and our evidence. So what's our strategy? Someone called out. We stick to facts. We present the evidence methodically, building a case that's impossible to deny. Dr. Chen testifies first, establishing the pattern of missing medical supplies. Then Park shows the shipping discrepancies. Then Margaret reveals the forced resignation and Marcus's threats. And finally, Kael's eyes found Arya. Finally, Arya testifies about what she found and what Marcus did when she tried to expose it. And if Marcus brings his own witnesses, Maya asked, we know he will. Then we cross-examine them. Hard. We find the holes in their stories and we exploit them. Kale's expression was fierce. Marcus is going to try to make this about Arya's credibility, about whether she's a reliable witness or just a scorned woman making false accusations. We counter by showing that this isn't about her feelings. It's about documented theft, confirmed murder, and systematic corruption. Dr. Chen spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. What if we're wrong? What if the council doesn't believe us? Then we lose. Marcus stays in power. Everyone who testified against him becomes a target, and corruption continues unchecked. Kyle didn't soften the truth. But I don't think we're going to lose. I think the evidence is too strong, the crime's too severe for the council to ignore. And I think Marcus knows that, which is why he's going to be desperate. Desperate people are dangerous, Riker observed. Yes, which is why we travel together, stay together, and trust no one outside this room until the hearing is over. Kale's gaze swept the assembly. Marcus will try to isolate us, turn us against each other, maybe even eliminate key witnesses before they can testify. We don't let that happen. Understand? A chorus of agreement rippled through the crowd. After the meeting, Arya found herself alone on one of the compound's observation platforms, looking out over the forest. Tomorrow she'd face Marcus in front of the most powerful wolves in the region. Tomorrow she'd either find justice or lose everything. Nervous? She turned to find Maya leaning against the railing beside her. Terrified, Arya admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Maya was quiet for a moment. You've come a long way from the half-dead girl Kael dragged out of the snow. I had good teachers. You had a reason to survive. That's different. Maya studied her. I didn't think you'd make it, you know. First week, I gave you maybe 20% odds, figured you'd either break completely or run away the first chance you got. What changed your mind? Day 8, when I caught you doing pull-ups at dawn even though your ribs were still broken. That's when I knew you might actually be tough enough for this. Maya's smile was slight, but genuine. You're still not invincible, still make stupid decisions sometimes, but you're a fighter. That counts for something. Coming from Maya, it was practically a declaration of friendship. I couldn't have done this without you, Arya said. Any of it. Yeah, well, don't get sentimental on me now. We've still got a hearing to win. But Maya's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, I'll be right there in that chamber. And if Marcus tries anything at all, he's going to have to go through me to get to you. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over territory Arya had learned to think of as home. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, revelation, and possibly violence. But tonight, she had allies. She had evidence. She had truth. And she had something Marcus would never understand, the unbreakable determination of someone who'd already survived the worst he could do. The journey to Blackstone territory took 3 hours. They traveled in a convoy, 2 vehicles with Arya, Kael, and the witnesses in the center, surrounded by guards. Maya drove, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. He's going to be there already, Arya said, watching the forest blur past. Marcus. Waiting. Let him wait, Kael replied. Let him sweat. The longer he has to think about what we're bringing, the more nervous he'll get. But when they arrived at the council hall, a massive stone structure that had stood for over a century, it was immediately clear that Marcus had been busy. Dozens of wolves in Vance colors lined the approach, not threatening exactly, but present. A show of force, a reminder that Marcus still commanded loyalty, or at least obedience. Intimidation tactics, Maya muttered. Classic. They made their way through the crowd, heads high, refusing to show uncertainty. The Vance wolves watched them pass with expressions ranging from hostile to curious. Some of them Arya recognized, people she'd grown up with, trained beside, trusted. How many of them knew what Marcus had done? How many had chosen to ignore it? Inside the council hall was impressive. High ceilings, ancient wood panels, rows of seats arranged in a semicircle around a central floor where the accused would stand. At the far end, an elevated platform held 5 chairs for the council members who would judge the case. Marcus was already there, standing with his lawyer and a cluster of supporters. When he saw Arya, his expression flickered, surprise, quickly masked, followed by something that looked almost like satisfaction. Miss Vance, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. I'm pleased to see you're alive. When you disappeared, we feared the worst. The audacity of it made Arya's hands clench, but Kael's steadying presence at her shoulder kept her from responding. Save it for your testimony, Marcus, Kael said coolly. The council will want to hear all about your concerns for Miss Vance's welfare. Marcus's smile was thin. I'm sure they will. Just as I'm sure they'll be interested in hearing about your illegal incursion into Vance territory and your theft of private property. You mean the evidence we recovered? Yes, I imagine they'll be very interested in that. The two alphas stared at each other, the air between them crackling with tension, until a door opened and the council members filed in. Chairman Wu was old, maybe 70, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. He took his seat at the center, flanked by 4 other senior alphas representing different regions. When he spoke, his voice was surprisingly strong. This emergency session of the Regional Council is now in order. We are here to address serious accusations made against Marcus Thorne, acting alpha of the Vance Pack, including but not limited to corruption, theft of pack resources, attempted murder, and actual murder of pack members. Wu's gaze swept the chamber. This is not a trial in the human sense. We are here to determine facts, assess evidence, and decide what action, if any, the Council must take to maintain order and justice within our territories. He paused, letting that sink in. Mr. Thorne, you stand accused. How do you respond? Marcus stood, and Arya was struck by how calm he looked. Too calm. Like someone who held cards no one else knew about. Chairman Wu, council members, I respond with absolute denial. These accusations are false, malicious, and brought by individuals who have their own agendas. His eyes flicked to Arya, including a young woman who fled her lawful bonding ceremony and has now fabricated elaborate lies to justify her abandonment of pack duty. You'll have opportunity to present your defense, Wu said. But first, we'll hear the accuser's evidence. Alpha Draven, you may begin. What followed was methodical, devastating, and thorough. Doctor, Chen presented her medical records, showing years of supply shortages that didn't match the official procurement logs. James Park displayed shipping manifests with discrepancies that could only be explained by deliberate diversion. Margaret Ross testified about the forced resignation, producing emails and recorded conversations that showed Marcus's threats. And through it all, Marcus sat calmly, occasionally whispering to his lawyer, his expression never shifting from controlled confidence. It unnerved Arya. He should have been sweating, scrambling, showing some sign that the walls were closing in. Instead, he looked like a man playing a game he'd already won. Finally, it was Arya's turn. She stood and walked to the center of the chamber, feeling every eye on her. The council members watched with professional detachment. Kael's people watched with support. The Vance wolves watched with something between curiosity and hostility. And Marcus watched with those cold, calculating eyes that still made her skin crawl. Miss Vance, Chairman Wu said, please state your account of the events leading to your departure from Vance territory. Arya took a breath and began. She described finding the ledgers, confronting Marcus, the beating in the basement. She laid out every detail clinically, refusing to let emotion color the facts. When she described waking in the snow, dying, she kept her voice level and clear. Marcus Thorne attempted to murder me to prevent me from exposing his crimes. He failed, and now I'm here to ensure everyone knows what he did. Do you have evidence of this attempted murder? One of the council members asked. I have medical records from Dr. Reeves showing my injuries consistent with severe assault and exposure. I have the drug that was found in my system, a vocal paralytic that prevented me from calling for help. And I have these. Riker brought forward the phone, now connected to a large display screen. One by one, they showed the photos Arya had taken, the ledgers, the accounts, the evidence of systematic theft. And finally, Arya said, I have the emails we recovered, including one where Marcus explicitly states his plan to handle me if I refuse the bonding ceremony. The emails appeared on the screen, and Arya watched the council members' faces as they read, saw the shift from professional interest to genuine concern. These are serious allegations, Wu said. Mr. Thorne, how do you respond? Marcus stood, and that's when Arya saw it. the slight smile playing at the corner of his mouth, the look of someone about to spring a trap. I respond with facts, Chairman Wu. Facts that Alpha Draven and his conspirators have conveniently omitted. He nodded to his lawyer, who produced a folder. These are psychiatric evaluations of Arya Vance, conducted over the past 2 years by our pack physician. They show a pattern of instability, paranoia, and delusional thinking. Arya's stomach dropped. The doctor noted concerns about her mental fitness for bonding, but her father insisted we proceed. When she found financial records she didn't understand, records that are perfectly legitimate, I might add, her paranoia convinced her they were evidence of corruption. She became increasingly erratic, making wild accusations, refusing to listen to reason. That's a lie, Arya said, but Marcus continued smoothly. The night she disappeared, I found her in my office, destroying documents. When I tried to stop her, she became violent, attacked me. In self-defense, I restrained her, but she escaped before we could get her the help she clearly needed. We searched for days, assuming she'd run off in a delusional state. We never imagined she'd manufactured this elaborate conspiracy theory to justify her actions. This is ridiculous, Kyle interjected. You're claiming she beat herself half to death? Injected herself with a paralytic? Threw herself into the snow to die? I'm claiming she's mentally ill and has been manipulated by you to create a false narrative that serves your territorial ambitions. Marcus's voice was regretful, sympathetic even. It's tragic, really. A young woman so desperate to escape an arranged bonding that she's willing to destroy an entire pack's reputation with lies. The chamber erupted in argument. Arya felt the room tilting, felt everything she'd built crumbling. Because she could see it working, the council members exchanging glances, doubt creeping into their expressions. Marcus had given them an out, a way to dismiss everything she'd said as the ravings of an unstable girl. Order! Wu's voice cracked like a whip. Mr. Thorne, these psychiatric evaluations, who conducted them? Dr. Richard Foster, our pack physician for 15 years, a respected medical professional with no reason to falsify records. And where is Dr. Foster now? Unfortunately, he retired last month and relocated out of state, but his records speak for themselves. Too convenient. Way too convenient. Arya could see Kyle thinking the same thing. Marcus had either fabricated the evaluations or pressured the doctor to write them, then made sure the doctor disappeared before he could be questioned. But proving that would take time they didn't have. I want those evaluations examined by an independent psychiatrist, Wu said. And I want to speak with this Dr. Foster directly. Of course, Chairman, though I should mention that Alpha Draven has had over a month to coach Miss Vance on what to say, how to act. Any current evaluation would be tainted by his influence. It was a masterful defense. Admit nothing, discredit everything, and make Arya herself the question mark rather than the witness. Arya opened her mouth to respond, but Kyle caught her eye and shook his head slightly. He was right. Getting emotional now would only play into Marcus's narrative. Instead, it was Dr. Chen who spoke up. Chairman Wu, if I may. I've known Arya Vance since she was a child. I've treated her for various minor injuries and illnesses over the years. Never, not once, did I observe any signs of mental instability. She was always rational, thoughtful, and completely coherent. The older woman's voice was firm. Furthermore, the missing medical supplies I documented, they disappeared during months when Dr. Foster was in charge of inventory. I found that suspicious at the time, but I had no proof of wrongdoing. You're basing medical opinion on casual observation? Marcus's lawyer jumped in. Dr. Chen, you're not a psychiatrist. You're not qualified to assess Miss Vance's mental state. No, but I am qualified to identify patterns of theft. And those records don't lie, no matter what psychiatric evaluations you produce. The arguments continued, back and forth, each side landing blows but neither delivering a knockout. Arya could feel the momentum shifting, slipping, the victory she'd thought was certain becoming uncertain. And then Margaret Ross stood. Chairman Wu, council members, I have something to add. She looked older than Arya remembered, tired, but her voice was steady. Marcus Thorne claims Arya is mentally unstable and violent, but I was there the night she allegedly attacked him. I heard the screaming from the basement. I saw his enforcers carry her out, unconscious and bleeding. And I heard Marcus give explicit orders to dump her body where it wouldn't be found. The chamber went dead silent. I said nothing because I was afraid. Because Marcus had already forced out the Alpha and taken control, and I knew what happened to people who challenged him. Margaret's hands shook, but she didn't look away from the council. But I can't stay silent anymore. Not when 3 innocent people are dead. Not when this man is trying to paint his victim as crazy to cover his crimes. That's hearsay, Marcus's lawyer protested. No, Margaret said quietly. It's eyewitness testimony, and I'm willing to swear to it under any oath you require. Wu leaned forward. Mrs. Ross, you understand that making false statements to this council carries severe penalties? I do. And I'm prepared to face them if I'm lying, but I'm not lying. Everything Arya said happened exactly as she described it. For the first time, Arya saw Marcus's calm facade crack. Just for a second, a flash of anger, quickly suppressed, but it was there. Wu conferred quietly with the other council members. Then he straightened. We're going to adjourn for 2 hours while we review all the evidence and testimony. Both parties will remain available for questions. This session is in recess. As the council members filed out, Arya felt Kael's hand on her shoulder. That was close, he said quietly. Too close. He almost buried us with those fake evaluations. But he didn't. And now the council has to decide who they believe, a respected aide who's risking everything to tell the truth, or an acting alpha with obvious motivations to lie. Kael's expression was grim. It's going to come down to credibility. Yours versus his. They waited in a side chamber, tension thick enough to cut. Maya paced. Riker checked and rechecked the evidence files. The witnesses sat in uncomfortable silence, each processing the reality that they'd just made themselves targets. Arya stared at the wall, replaying every word, every argument, trying to figure out what else she could have said, what she'd missed. After what felt like days but was probably 90 minutes, a clerk appeared. The council is ready? They filed back into the main chamber. Marcus was already there, looking confident again, his lawyer whispering last-minute strategies. Chairman Wu waited until everyone was seated before speaking. This council has reviewed the evidence, heard the testimony, and deliberated on the accusations brought before us. His voice was grave. We find the evidence of financial corruption to be compelling and worthy of further investigation. The discrepancies in supply records, shipping manifests, and medical inventory cannot be explained away as simple bookkeeping errors. Arya's heart began to race. However, Wu continued, and her stomach sank. The accusations of attempted murder rest primarily on Miss Vance's testimony, which Mr. Thorne has challenged with psychiatric evaluations that, while questionable in origin, cannot be entirely dismissed without further examination. Chairman, Kael started, but Wu held up a hand. I'm not finished. Mrs. Ross's testimony provides corroboration of Miss Vance's account, but it remains a he said, she said situation that requires more investigation than we can conduct in a single hearing. He paused. Therefore, this council makes the following rulings. The chamber held its collective breath. First, Marcus Thorne is hereby suspended from his position as acting alpha of the Vance Pack, effective immediately, pending a full investigation into the financial irregularities documented by Dr. Chen and Mr. Park. An independent auditor will be appointed to review all PAC finances for the past 5 years. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Second, the accusations of attempted murder and actual murder will be investigated by a special tribunal. All parties involved, including Miss Vance, Mr. Thorne, and any witnesses, will be required to submit to formal depositions and, if necessary, medical and psychiatric evaluations conducted by neutral third parties. Third, until these investigations are complete, the Vance Pack will be placed under temporary council oversight. Former Alpha James Vance will be released from house arrest and reinstated in an advisory capacity to ensure pack stability. Marcus's face went white. Mr. Thorne, you are not formally charged with any crimes at this time, but you are strongly advised to cooperate fully with all investigations. Any attempt to intimidate witnesses, destroy evidence, or interfere with the tribunal's work will result in immediate and severe consequences. Wu's eyes were hard. Do you understand? Marcus stood slowly. I understand, Chairman, and I welcome the investigation. It will prove my innocence. We'll see. Wu turned to Arya. Miss Vance, you are under Alpha Draven's protection until the tribunal reaches a conclusion. You are not to return to Vance territory unless explicitly authorized by this council. Understood? Yes, Chairman. Then this session is adjourned. All parties will be contacted regarding next steps. The gavel came down, and Arya realized she was shaking, not from fear, from relief so profound it was almost painful. They hadn't won. Not completely, but they hadn't lost either, and Marcus was suspended, investigated, his power stripped away. It wasn't justice yet, but it was a start. As they filed out of the chamber, Maya leaned close. You did it. You actually pulled it off. We're not done yet. No, but you survived. You stood up to him. You told your truth, and the council believed you enough to act on it. Maya's smile was fierce. That's a victory, Arya. Own it. Outside, the Vance wolves who'd been so intimidating on the way in now looked uncertain, confused. Their leader had been suspended. Their pack was under investigation. Everything they'd known was crumbling. And Arya Vance, the girl they'd thought was dead, had been the one to tear it all down. Kale pulled her aside as they reached the vehicles. How do you feel? Like I can breathe for the first time in weeks. Good, because we're not done yet. The tribunal will be thorough, and Marcus will fight every step of the way. But we've got momentum now. We've got the council's attention, and most importantly, he squeezed her shoulder, we've got truth on our side. The drive back to Draven territory was subdued but cautiously optimistic. They'd survived the first battle. The war wasn't over, but they'd drawn first blood. And as Arya watched the forest blur past, she allowed herself to imagine a future where Marcus paid for what he'd done, where the families he'd stolen from got justice, where she could finally stop running and start living. It wasn't victory yet, but it was close enough to taste. The victory lasted exactly 3 days before Marcus made his move. Arya was in the training grounds, working through a kata Maya had designed to rebuild her stamina, when Riker came sprinting across the compound. His face was ashen, his breathing ragged from running. They took them, he gasped. The Hayes family, the Chens, 5 other families who were documented as victims in the financial records. Marcus's people grabbed them 2 hours ago. The practice staff fell from Arya's hands. What? Hostages. He's holding them hostage. Riker pulled out his phone, showing her a video that made her blood run cold. It showed 15 people, men, women, children, huddled in what looked like a warehouse, fear etched on every face. This just got sent to the council and every major alpha in the region. Marcus's voice played over the video, calm and measured. Chairman Wu, council members, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. These families have requested my protection while this unfortunate investigation proceeds. They fear retaliation from those who would use them as pawns in a political game. I'm merely ensuring their safety. That's not protection, Maya snarled, appearing beside them. That's kidnapping, which he's framing as voluntary protective custody, Kyle said, striding up with his phone pressed to his ear. And unless someone directly contradicts that claim, the council can't act without risking a full territorial war. He lowered the phone. I just spoke to Wu. His hands are tied unless we can prove coercion. So we prove it, Arya said. We get those people out. From the heart of Vance territory, with Marcus on high alert and probably expecting exactly that? Kale's expression was grim. That's a suicide mission. Then it's a good thing I'm used to those. Arya met his eyes. Marcus is escalating because he's desperate. The investigation is closing in. His power base is crumbling, and he knows the only way out is to force a stalemate. He takes hostages. We back off. Everything freezes while he consolidates control. Or he's baiting us, Maya said. Get us to rush in, make a mistake, give him justification to claim we're the aggressors. Probably both. Arya's mind was racing, pieces falling into place. But he made one miscalculation. He thinks I'll stay here, safe behind Kyle's protection, while innocent people suffer because of me. He thinks I'll let guilt paralyze me. And you won't? Kyle asked quietly. No, I won't. She looked at each of them in turn. Marcus tried to kill me because I found evidence of what he'd done to those families. He failed, and now he's hurting them again to protect himself. I'm not letting that happen. Arya, I know it's risky. I know it could go wrong, but those people are in danger because they were his victims, and I'm the one who exposed it. If there's even a chance we can get them out safely, we have to try. Kale studied her for a long moment, and Arya could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing risk against reward, strategy against morality. If we do this, he said finally, we do it smart. No rushing in, no heroics. We plan every detail, we use every advantage we have, and we don't make a move until we're sure we can pull it off. How much time do we have? Maybe 48 hours before the tribunal reconvenes. After that, if those hostages are still in Marcus's hands, the council will have to acknowledge his protective custody claim as legitimate. Once that happens, getting them out becomes infinitely harder. Then we have 48 hours. Arya's voice was steel. Let's use them. They spent the next 12 hours planning. Kyle pulled up schematics of Vance's territory that Arya had never seen, detailed maps showing patrol routes, weak points in their perimeter, buildings that could be used for hostage situations. The warehouse in the video was identified as an old supply depot near the southern border, isolated but defensible. 3 access points, Maya said, marking them on the map. Main entrance here, loading dock on the east side, and a ventilation system that connects to the roof. Marcus will have all 3 covered. How many guards? Riker asked. Based on the video, I counted at least 8 inside, probably twice that many surrounding the building. Kale zoomed in on the patrol patterns. He's not taking chances. What about the hostages themselves? Dr. Reeves had joined them, her medical expertise needed for extraction planning. Are any of them injured? Do we know their physical condition? Mrs. Hayes has a heart condition, Arya said quietly, and the Chen's youngest daughter is only 6. If this goes loud, if there's violence, then we make sure it doesn't go loud. Kael's voice was firm. We need a distraction, something big enough to pull guards away from the warehouse, but not so obvious that Marcus realizes what we're doing. What about the tribunal? Arya asked. Marcus knows it reconvenes in 2 days. What if we accelerate that? Make him think it's happening tomorrow instead. Force him to split his attention between the hostages and preparing his defense. Kale's eyes narrowed. That could work. Wu would never agree to actually move the hearing, but if Marcus thinks it's happening early, he might pull resources from the warehouse to shore up his legal team. It's risky, Maya said. If he sees through it, everything about this is risky, but it's better than charging in blind. Kale pulled out his phone. I'll reach out to Wu's office, see if we can spread some convincing misinformation. Arya, I need you to make a list of everyone who's being held. Family connections, medical needs, anything that might affect extraction. The list was painful to write. Sarah Chen's parents and sister. The Hayes family, mother, father, 2 teenage sons. 3 families from the lower districts who'd depended on the medical supplies Marcus had stolen. A young couple whose newborn had died because the incubator medications never arrived. 15 people whose only crime was being victimized twice. First by theft, now by abduction. We're getting them out, Maya said quietly, reading over Arya's shoulder. All of them. I don't care what it takes. By hour 18, they had a plan. Not a perfect one. There were too many variables, too many things that could go wrong. But it was workable, and more importantly, it played to their strengths while exploiting Marcus's weaknesses. The misinformation campaign went live at midnight. Carefully planted rumors about an early tribunal session, complete with fabricated scheduling documents that looked official enough to pass casual scrutiny. By morning, 3 different sources had confirmed that the hearing was moved up to tomorrow afternoon. He's biting, Riker reported, monitoring communication intercepts. Marcus just recalled 2 of his best lawyers from out of state. He's scrambling to prepare. What about the warehouse? Kael asked. Guard count dropped by 4. Not enough to make extraction easy, but better than before. It would have to be enough. They moved at dusk, when shadows were longest and sight lines were compromised. The team was small by necessity. Kael, Maya, Riker, Arya, and 6 of Draven's most experienced fighters. Too many bodies would be impossible to coordinate. Too few would leave them vulnerable. Arya wore tactical gear that felt foreign and familiar all at once. The knife at her belt was the same one she'd used in the Borderlands skirmish. The comm unit in her ear crackled with quiet check-ins as everyone confirmed position. Alpha team in position, Maya's voice whispered. South approach clear. Beta team set, Riker responded. East side covered. Kale's hand found Arya's shoulder. Last chance to change your mind. You can stay back. Let us handle this. No, those people know me. They'll trust me faster than armed strangers. She met his eyes. And Marcus needs to see that I'm not afraid of him anymore. You were always going to do this, Kyle said. It wasn't a question. Yeah, I was. His hand tightened briefly, then released. Stay close to me. If anything goes wrong, anything at all, you run. Understand? Kyle, promise me, Arya. This only works if you survive to testify. If Marcus gets his hands on you, everything falls apart. She hated it, but he was right. I promise. They approached from the north using a dry creek bed for cover. The warehouse loomed ahead, lights burning in windows that should have been dark. Arya could see guards on patrol, their movements professional but predictable. Guards change positions every 12 minutes, Maya whispered through the comm. Next rotation in 90 seconds. They waited, counting heartbeats. When the guards shifted, Maya's team moved first, quick and silent, neutralizing the south entrance guards with tranquilizer darts that dropped them mid-step. Riker's team followed, securing the east side with the same ruthless efficiency. Main entrance still covered, Kale murmured. 3 guards, alert and watching. We'll need to go through the ventilation. The roof access was exactly where the schematics showed it, a maintenance ladder that had seen better days but held their weight. Arya climbed behind Kyle, her injured shoulder protesting but functional. The ventilation grate came off with minimal noise. Below, they could hear voices, guards talking, someone crying softly. I'm going first, Kale said. 30-second intervals, then you follow. He dropped through the opening with barely a sound, disappearing into darkness. Arya counted to 30, then followed. She landed in a storage room filled with abandoned equipment. Kyle was already at the door, peering through a crack. He gestured for her to stay back, then slipped into the hallway beyond. Arya counted to 30 again, then followed. The hallway was dimly lit, lined with doors that probably led to offices or storage. Voices echoed from somewhere ahead, the main warehouse floor where the hostages were being held. Kyle moved like a shadow, and Arya did her best to match him. They reached the main floor entrance and pressed against the wall, listening. Not sure how much longer we can keep this up, a guard was saying. These people need food, water, medical attention for the old woman. Marcus said hold them until the tribunal is resolved, another voice responded. So that's what we do. And if someone tries to rescue them, then we make sure there's no one left to rescue. The casual threat made Arya's hands clench, but Kyle's warning look kept her still. They needed to wait for the signal. It came 3 minutes later, a small explosion on the south side of the building, followed by shouts and the sound of guards running. The distraction Riker had engineered, drawing attention away from the hostages. Now, Kale whispered, and they moved. The main floor was chaos, guards abandoning posts to respond to the explosion, others shouting for orders. In the center, huddled together, were the hostages. Mrs. Hayes saw Arya first. Her eyes went wide, disbelieving. Arya? We're getting you out, Arya said, moving quickly to help the older woman stand. But we need to move fast. The Chen family scrambled to their feet, the youngest daughter clutching her mother's hand. The other hostages followed, hope and fear warring on their faces. This way, Kyle directed, leading them toward the maintenance hallway. Stay quiet. Stay together. They'd made it maybe 20 feet when everything went wrong. Marcus stepped out of a side office, flanked by 4 guards who'd stayed behind specifically for this scenario. His expression was triumphant, vindicated. I knew you'd come, he said, looking directly at Arya. Knew you couldn't resist playing hero. It's your fatal flaw, this pathological need to save everyone. Let them go, Marcus, Kyle said, his voice cold. This is between you and me now. No, Alpha Draven. This is between me and the girl who tried to destroy everything I built. Marcus moved closer, casual and confident. I underestimated you once, Arya. Left you in the snow thinking you were too weak to survive. I won't make that mistake again. You made a lot of mistakes, Arya said, stepping forward despite Kyle's warning hand on her arm. You got sloppy, greedy, arrogant. You thought you could steal from your own pack and no one would notice. You thought you could kill anyone who questioned you and get away with it. I did get away with it. For years. And I would have continued if you hadn't gone digging where you didn't belong. His smile was cold. But that's about to be corrected. You see, these people, he gestured to the hostages, are going to testify that you and Draven kidnapped them, forced them to lie about me. And when the tribunal hears that, when they understand that everything you've claimed is fabricated, your credibility disappears completely. They won't lie for you, Arya said. They will if they want their families to survive. Marcus's voice hardened. Everyone has leverage, Arya. Everyone has something to lose. You taught me that when you forced this confrontation. Kael was subtly shifting position, his fighters moving into flanking positions. But Marcus's guards were ready, hands on weapons, waiting for the slightest provocation. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus continued. You're going to surrender. You're going to come back to Vance territory where you belong. And you're going to recant every accusation you've made. In exchange, these people go free, and I forget about charging Alpha Draven with kidnapping and territorial violation. And if I refuse, then people start dying. Starting with, he gestured casually toward Mrs. Hayes, the weak ones who can't defend themselves. The calculation was cold, brutal, and absolutely in character for Marcus. Arya could see he meant every word. She could also see something else, the slight tremor in his hand, the tightness around his eyes. Marcus was cornered, desperate, holding on to power by his fingernails. This wasn't strength. It was the last thrashing of someone who knew he'd already lost. No deal, Arya said. Marcus's expression flickered. You're willing to let innocent people die to protect your lies? They're not lies. And you're not going to kill anyone because you need these hostages alive. They're your only leverage. The moment they're dead, you've got nothing left to bargain with, and the council will come down on you with everything they have. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I've spent 6 weeks learning exactly how you think, exactly how you operate. You're a coward, Marcus. You only hurt people when you think you can get away with it. But right now, with Kael's team surrounding this building and your escape routes cut off, you can't get away with anything. Marcus's hand moved toward his weapon, but froze when he saw Maya step out of the shadows behind him, her gun trained on his head. Bad idea, she said pleasantly. Drop it. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, Marcus's hand fell away from his weapon. It's over, Kael said quietly. You're outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and out of options. Let the hostages go and we'll settle this at the tribunal like civilized adults. Civilized, Marcus laughed, bitter and harsh. There's nothing civilized about what you've done to me. My pack, my position, my reputation, you've destroyed all of it. No, Arya said. You destroyed it yourself. We just made sure everyone could see what you'd done. The admission hung in the air. Not quite a confession, but close enough. Riker's recorder, hidden on Arya's tactical vest, captured every word. Marcus seemed to realize what he'd said because his expression shifted, calculating. That won't be admissible. This is a hostage situation conducted under duress. Actually, a new voice said from the warehouse entrance, this is an active crime scene and everything said here is very much admissible. Chairman Wu walked in, flanked by council enforcers in full tactical gear. His expression was granite. When Alpha Draven informed me of this rescue operation, I decided the council needed to observe firsthand. Wu's gaze swept the room, taking in the hostages, the guards, Marcus's guilty expression. What I've observed is Marcus Thorne holding 15 pack members against their will while attempting to coerce false testimony through threats of violence. Chairman, this is a misunderstanding, so no, Mr. Thorne. This is kidnapping, witness intimidation, and attempted obstruction of justice. And I've heard every word you've said in the last 5 minutes. Wu gestured to his enforcers. Take him into custody, and someone get medical attention for these people. What followed was controlled chaos. Marcus was disarmed and restrained, still protesting his innocence. The hostages were checked by medics, given water and blankets. Mrs. Hayes hugged Arya so hard her ribs screamed, but Arya didn't pull away. You came for us, the older woman whispered. When everyone else abandoned us, you came. I wasn't going to let him hurt you again, Arya said. Not ever again. Kael found her an hour later, sitting on a supply crate outside the warehouse while medics finished their work. Her hands were shaking, adrenaline crash probably. combined with delayed fear from how close it had all come to disaster. Wu wants to talk to you, he said, settling beside her. He's reconvening the tribunal tomorrow morning, emergency session. Says there's enough evidence now to make formal charges. Marcus will fight it. Let him. He's got nothing left to fight with. The hostages are safe. His guards are talking to save their own skins, and Wu personally witnessed him threatening violence. Kale's shoulder pressed against hers, warm and solid. You won, Arya. It's really over. The words should have felt triumphant. Instead, they felt surreal, like something happening to someone else. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, she admitted. For Marcus to pull some last trick, for something to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong. We've got him. Kale turned to face her. You did this. You survived when he tried to kill you, you gathered evidence when no one believed you, and you stood up in front of the council when everyone said you were crazy. You earned this victory. We earned it. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Maybe, but I wouldn't have tried without you giving me a reason to. His expression was serious. I told you that first night. I saved you because I hated people who hurt the defenseless. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about that and started being about you. About making sure you got justice. About keeping you safe. Arya's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. Kael, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. He stood, offering his hand. Come on, let's finish this. The emergency tribunal session the next morning was standing room only. Every major alpha in the region had shown up, word having spread about the hostage situation and Marcus's arrest. The energy in the council hall was electric, anticipatory. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, his lawyer beside him, but the fight had gone out of his eyes. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his power and position to prop him up. Chairman Wu called the session to order, his voice carrying to every corner. We are here to address charges of corruption, theft, attempted murder, actual murder, kidnapping, and witness intimidation against Marcus Thorne. Mr. Thorne, how do you plead? For a long moment, Marcus said nothing, then quietly, not guilty. What followed was systematic destruction. The council presented financial records showing years of theft. Dr. Chen testified about the missing medical supplies. James Park detailed the shipping fraud. Margaret Ross described the forced resignation and threats. And then it was Arya's turn again. This time, when she stood before the council, she wasn't nervous, wasn't afraid. She'd faced Marcus in a warehouse with lives on the line. This was just words, just truth, and she had plenty of both. She described everything. The basement, the beating, waking in the snow. She presented the medical evidence, the photos, the emails, and she looked Marcus in the eye while she did it, making sure he understood that she wasn't the scared girl he'd thrown away anymore. When she finished, Wu turned to Marcus. Do you wish to cross-examine this witness? Marcus's lawyer started to stand, but Marcus put a hand on his arm. No cross-examination. The lawyer looked shocked. Marcus, we need to challenge her testimony. It won't matter. She's telling the truth. Marcus's voice was flat, defeated. All of it. The theft, the murder attempts, the hostages. I did everything she said I did. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Wu slammed his gavel for order. Mr. Thorne, are you confessing to these crimes? I'm acknowledging reality, Chairman. You have the evidence, you have the witnesses, and you have me on record threatening those hostages last night. Marcus finally met Arya's eyes, and something like respect flickered there. She beat me. I underestimated her, and she beat me. Then, this tribunal finds Marcus Thorne guilty of all charges. Wu's voice was iron. The sentence is as follows. Permanent exile from all Pact territories, forfeiture of all assets and property, and a formal notation in regional records marking you as a criminal unworthy of Pact protection or support. You have 24 hours to leave this region. If you're found on Pact lands after that time, any Alpha has the right to kill you on sight. It was the harshest sentence the Council could impose short of execution. Marcus would be utterly alone, stripped of everything, unable to find sanctuary anywhere in the supernatural world. Furthermore, Wu continued, the Vance Pact will be restructured under Council supervision. Former Alpha James Vance will be reinstated with a Council-appointed advisory board to ensure proper governance. All stolen resources will be returned to the families affected, with reparations paid for Marcus Thorne's seized assets. He looked at Arya. Miss Vance, this council owes you an apology. You came to us with the truth, and we failed to believe you quickly enough. That failure cost lives. We will not make that mistake again. The acknowledgement was public, formal, and witnessed by every alpha in the region. Arya felt something tight in her chest finally loosen. Thank you, Chairman. The session adjourned and people crowded around Arya, some offering congratulations, others asking questions, a few just wanting to shake her hand. It was overwhelming, surreal. Through the crowd, she saw Marcus being led away by council enforcers. Their eyes met one last time, and she saw something in his expression she hadn't expected. Acceptance. He'd gambled everything on his ability to manipulate, control, and win, and he'd lost to someone he'd once dismissed as nobody. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. That evening, back at Draven territory, they held an impromptu celebration. Nothing fancy, just the pack gathered in the main hall, sharing food and stories, the tension of the past weeks finally releasing. Arya found herself on the observation platform again, watching the festivities from a distance. Maya joined her after a few minutes, pressing a drink into her hand. Not a fan of parties? Maya asked. Not used to being the center of attention. Well, better get used to it. You're famous now, the girl who took down a corrupt alpha and lived to tell about it. Maya clinked her glass against Arya's. People are going to tell stories about you for years. That's terrifying. That's influence. Use it wisely. Maya was quiet for a moment. So what's next for you? Going back to Vance territory now that it's safe? The question made Arya pause. She hadn't really thought about it, had been so focused on surviving, on getting justice, that she hadn't considered what came after. I don't know, she admitted. It doesn't feel like home anymore. Too many memories, too many reminders of everything that happened. You could stay here. Arya looked at her, surprised. In Draven territory? Why not? You've trained with us, fought beside us, nearly died for us multiple times. As far as I'm concerned, you've earned your place. Maya's expression was serious. And I think Kyle would like it if you stayed. Not that he'd ever admit it directly, because he's emotionally constipated like that. But still, Maya, I'm not saying you have to decide now. Just think about it. You've got options, Arya. That's new for you. Don't waste them by settling for less than you deserve. She left, and Arya was alone with her thoughts and the night sky. Footsteps announced Kael's arrival. He leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Big day, he said. Understatement of the year. How are you really feeling? Arya considered the question. Relieved, exhausted, a little lost, actually. I spent so long focused on one goal that now that it's done, I'm not sure what comes next. That's fair. You've earned the right to be a little lost. Kael turned to face her. Maya talked to you about staying. How did you... I asked her to. Figured it would be less awkward coming from her than from me. His smile was slight. I'm not good at this. At asking for things I want when they don't directly benefit the pack. But I'm going to try anyway. Her heart started beating faster. Stay, Kael said simply. Not as a refugee. Not as someone under my protection. Stay as a member of this pack. As my... He paused, choosing words carefully. As someone I'd very much like to have around, permanently. That's the most roundabout way of asking someone to stay I've ever heard, Arya said, but she was smiling. I told you I'm not good at this. He reached for her hand and she let him take it. But I mean it. You belong here, Arya. With people who see you for who you are, strong, brave, stubborn as hell. You fit here in a way you never fit in Vance territory. He wasn't wrong. These past weeks, despite the danger and the training and the constant threat of violence, she'd felt more at home than she had in years. Part of that was Kael, yes, but part of it was the pack itself, the way they'd accepted her, challenged her, pushed her to be better. I'd have to formally transfer packs, she said. It's a whole process, paperwork, council approval. Already started the paperwork. It's sitting on Wu's desk waiting for your signature. At her surprised look, Kael shrugged. I was optimistic. Presumptuous is more like it. That too. His thumb traced circles on her palm. So what do you say? Arya looked out over the compound, at the training grounds where she'd rebuilt her strength, at the medical wing where Dr. Reeves had put her back together, at the people moving below who'd become something like family. She thought about Vance territory, about the empty spaces where corruption had hollowed out what should have been community. Thought about going back to a place that held nothing but painful memories and ghosts of who she used to be. Then she looked at Kyle, at the man who'd pulled her from the snow and given her a reason to keep fighting, who'd believed in her when she'd barely believed in herself, who was asking her to stay not because she was useful or convenient, but because he wanted her there. "I say yes," Arya said. "I'll stay." The smile that crossed Kyle's face was genuine, unguarded, and completely worth every nightmare she'd survived to get here. He pulled her close, and she let him, tucking her head against his shoulder and breathing in the scent of pine and winter air and home. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for trusting me, for giving this place a chance. Thank you for saving my life multiple times. We're even then. Not even close, but we've got time to figure it out." They stood together as the celebration continued below, as the pack that had become hers welcomed her fully into their ranks, as the future spread out before her. Uncertain, yes, but no longer frightening. Arya Vance had been left to die in the frozen borderlands, discarded like trash by a man who'd thought her worthless. She'd survived. More than survived. She'd transformed into someone who changed the fate of countless lives, who proved that courage and determination could triumph over corruption and cruelty, who turned her greatest vulnerability into her greatest strength. The girl in the snow was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth and refused to let anyone take it away again. And in the end, that was the sweetest victory of all. 3 months later, Arya stood in the reconstructed Vance Territory Medical Clinic, watching as Dr. Chen inventoried supplies that had finally made it to where they were supposed to go. The Hayes family was there too, Mrs. Hayes's heart condition being monitored with equipment that had been missing for years. "This is because of you," Mrs. Hayes said, catching Arya's hand. "All of this. The new leadership, the reforms, the resources we have now. You changed everything." "I just told the truth," Arya said. "You did more than that. You gave us hope that the system could work, that justice was possible." The older woman smiled. "My grandson is applying to medical school next year. Says he wants to help people the way you helped us. You've inspired a whole generation, Arya." After the clinic visit, Arya made her way to the cemetery on the edge of territory. 3 new headstones stood in the place of honor reserved for pack members who died serving their people. Sarah Chen, Emma Vance, David Morris. The 3 Marcus had murdered to send his message. Arya placed flowers on each grave, kneeling in the grass that was finally growing green after the long winter. "I got him," she said quietly. "He's gone. He can't hurt anyone else. And everyone knows what he did. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry I couldn't save you." The words felt inadequate, insufficient, but they were all she had. She stayed until sunset, then made the drive back to Draven territory, back home, where Kyle was waiting with dinner and Maya's latest impossible training schedule and Riker's terrible jokes and all the normal, beautiful chaos of a pack that functioned the way packs were supposed to. That night, lying in bed with moonlight streaming through the window, Arya thought about the girl who'd woken in the snow 6 months ago. Thought about how that girl had been so focused on survival that she couldn't imagine anything beyond the next hour, the next day. If she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, the pain, the training, the confrontations, the victory, would she do anything differently? No. Because that girl in the snow had needed to break completely before she could rebuild into something stronger. Needed to lose everything before she could understand what truly mattered. Needed to face the absolute worst humanity could offer before she could recognize the best when it appeared. Marcus had tried to silence her, erase her, make her nothing. Instead, he'd forged her into exactly the weapon that would bring him down. The irony was beautiful. Arya closed her eyes and let sleep take her, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that she was exactly who she'd fought so hard to become. A survivor. A fighter. A woman who refused to stay broken. And that, more than any title, any position, any formal recognition, was the victory that mattered most.